Yours. Good evening, everyone. It's 6 p.m. and I declare this ordinary council meeting for March open. I welcome all councillors, staff, people in the public gallery and anyone watching online. The City of Swan acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay our respects to their elders past, present and their descendants and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. Item 2 is the disclaimer. The terms and conditions of entry into this meeting are posted on the door as you enter the public gallery. Please ensure you have read them prior to attending the meeting and abide by them. Item 3, attendance and apologies. I note all councillors are present in the chamber. All senior staff are present, other than Mr. Kane, the Chief Executive Officer, who is attending electronically as he has COVID. Mr. Kane has declared that he's able to maintain confidentiality during the meeting in accordance with Local Government Administration Regulations 1996. There is no one on leave and there are no apologies. Item 4, declarations of financial proximity or interest affecting impartiality. I have several to read out. The first one is from Councillor Zanino, who's declared a direct financial interest in item 3.2. Place office review, as he is a shareholder in Castac Proprietary Limited, the company that owns the property. In relation to item 6.4, there are two declarations, one by myself and one by Councillor Congdon. It's an impartiality interest in item 6.4, proposed introduction of vacant land rating categories in the 23-24 budget, as we both own vacant blocks of land within the City of Swan. Now, under section 5.631B of the Local Government Act, provides an exemptions to interest that need to be disclosed. And in item 563, some interests that don't need to be disclosed. And in subsection 1, so section 565, 570 and 571 do not apply to any relevant person who has any of the following interests in the matter. A, an interest in common with a significant number of electors or ratepayers, and B, an interest in the imposition of any rate, charge or fee by the local government. And we've both made that impartiality declaration. Councillor Congdon makes a further impartiality declaration on item 2.1, grant and financial assistance framework, as he is a committee member on the Malaga Crime Management Forum. Mr. van der Linde has declared an impartiality in item C 1.1, Councillor Bowman's motion on changes to planning as he plays golf on a social basis at the Vines Resorts. Are there any other councillors, particularly if any councillor is a member of a community organisation or business that may receive grant funding or funding under policy 2.1?
Yes, thanks for the pick up on that, Mr. Mayor. I'm also a member of the Malaga Crime Management Forum, so I'll put in that declaration.
If you can fill out the appropriate form, and it's the same with you, Councillor McCulloch, if you're a member of an organisation or a business that receives grant funding or funding from the city, if any other councillors could do that and pass them up to perhaps Ms Hodgkin before the end of this meeting. Councillor Johnson.
Got the same, so Guildford Association and Swan Guildford Historical Society.
Thank you. If you can complete those declarations, it'd be much appreciated. That takes us to item 5, public question times. Questions and answers recorded in the minutes of the meeting may be summarised in accordance with the Local Government Administration Regulations of 1996. Questions and answers marked with an asterisk have been amended either for the purpose of summarising or removing preamble statements or for editing purposes. All questions received have been answered and have been provided to the person that submitted the questions, and all questions will be published in the minutes of the meeting. Item 5.1, answers to questions which were taken on notice. There were nil. Item 5.2, questions relating to reports contained in the agenda. And 5.2.1, questions of which due notice have been given. There were nil. 5.2.2, questions without due notice. I ask if there's any member of the public who wishes to ask a question on any item on the agenda. Being no questions from the public gallery, we'll then move on to item 5.3, other questions. 5.3.1, questions of which due notice has been given, and there are 3 questions from Mr. Bob Baku, and they have been answered. Item 5.3.2, questions without due notice, and I've been advised that Mr. Viola Maripodi may wish to ask a question. If you can come to the podium, turn the talk button on, thanks, Ms. Maripodi, and ask your question.
Thank you.
Questions.
The answers to my previous council meeting questions have been deliberately evasive, to say the very least. I want to make it clear that a large winding vehicle access was recently constructed through the centre of Emu Swamp in Ballajura. This is not a fire break, but a large winding mulch road in the middle of this wetland. Emu Swamp is a conservation category wetland, yet you admitted that you did not seek approval for clearing this bushland to construct this unnecessary vehicle access. Non-native and native trees were cut down, and I have photos to prove this. Last week, I contacted the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation. They were very eager to answer my questions. So my questions tonight are, 1, are you aware that Emu Swamp is, being a conservation category wetland, is categorised as an environmentally sensitive area?
I'll have to take the question on notice, Ms. Maripodi, and I'll say for any questions you may have that if you let us know in advance what the questions are, we may be able to have a response ready for you in a timely manner or at the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Question 2. Are you aware that you needed a clearing permit as the Environmental Protection Act makes it an offence to clear native vegetation in an environmentally sensitive area unless the clearing is done in accordance with a clearing permit?
Thank you. I'll have to take that question on notice also.
3, will you admit that you have breached the Environmental Protection Act?
Well, I can't admit that because I'll have to take the question on notice and we'll get back to you in writing.
Okay, number 4, Emu Swamp is an Aboriginal heritage site, yet you did not contact the Aboriginal Heritage Department. Are you not blatantly disregarding the importance placed on Emu Swamp by the Aboriginal people? Why are you not giving them a voice?
I'll take that question on notice. Thank you.
Now, my last question is concerning the bullying behaviour of this council towards me. This is one example. On December 14, 2022, security did not allow me to enter this building. They apologised, but they told me that they were under instructions not to let me in before 6 p.m. Other people, however, were allowed into the public gallery from 5:30. I finally entered by following ex-Mayor Bailey inside, so security couldn't stop me. When I got inside, the public gallery was already full. Who gave instructions to security to keep me outside and why?
I'll have to take that on notice because I'm completely unaware of the situation.
I did report this to Kathy, and I spoke to her, I think the next day or the day after, and I asked her tonight and she has heard nothing more. So obviously it didn't go anywhere.
Well, I don't know what you said to Kathy. I
just made you aware that I did bring it to the attention.
No, fine. As I said, I'm completely unaware of the situation and will formally respond to you and I'll get the CEO to respond.
Thank you. And
Thank you very much.
Just another little point. Was it just a coincidence that it was that very night the very well-respected professor from the Aboriginal community was sitting in here in the public gallery? Thank you.
I don't see any correlation, but
I think she would have been very interested to hear what I have to say. I agree with you, Swamp, and the Aboriginal. Thank you.
thank you. I'll ask, is there any other member of the public who wishes to make ask a question without due notice? Being no further questions, we'll go on to public statement time and registrations for public statements. Council meeting is required by 10 a.m. Today, and Mrs. Diane Avino registered. If you could please come to the podium, Diane, and you've got 2 minutes to make your public statement. Thank you.
May I request an extra 20 seconds up front? Because I've culled it, but it's still 2 minutes and 20 seconds.
You're the only one, so let's go.
All right, okay, thank you. The loss of street trees. The 3-year-old trees in Bellevue need a weekly watering starting immediately. I counted 10 in Rasen Parade yesterday with leaves totally dried up or fallen off. There are more in other streets. The trunks are still showing green, so most may be able to be saved if quick action is taken. There are too many unnecessary losses of newly planted trees in the city, wasting budget allocations. The current watering procedure, according to the water truck operator I spoke to, is twice a week for first-year trees, once a week for second-year trees, and no water for third-year trees. The outcome shows no one checks if this is sufficient to keep the trees alive, as it is the third-year trees that are dying. We have been closely involved with the tree planting in Bellevue for 4 years, and each year there is a different person coordinating the program. This has resulted in a lack of ownership and no continuity of tasks. Examples are, in 2 consecutive years, watering didn't start till January, causing losses. There's no regular inspections on the health status of plantings. Replacement of failed new plantings doesn't always happen. In some streets, mulching was banked up against trunks and too high, and that caused losses. Some trees entirely missed from the watering schedule, causing losses. Different species have different water requirements, and the crepe myrtles, although eventually a drought-hardy tree, look to require at least 3 years watering to establish. A review of procedures may mean planting less trees to enable more care and retention of previous plantings. In summary, some suggestions to prevent losses are: employ a permanent person with horticultural experience to oversee urban canopy plantings and maintenance. Inspect trees on a regular basis during summer to ascertain if receiving enough water to thrive. Water 1 and 2-year trees twice weekly for 2 years from October. Water 3-year-old trees weekly from October if the species requires. Water a 4-year-old tree if under obvious heat stress. Use liquid fertiliser and wetting agent every 6 weeks. Use a private water contractor in addition to city water trucks to supplement. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm sure that your suggestions will be taken on board. Thank you. It's public statement time, there's no opportunity. That takes us to, I'll ask, there's no other public statements from the gallery. We'll move on to item 7, petitions, and I believe you have 3, Councillor Prodovnik.
Okay, the first petition is from residents from Sutherland Close in Guildford. There's 7 signatures, and the residents, owner occupiers in Sutherland Close, Guildford, agree that ongoing parking issues need to be addressed via our councillors and the City of Swan. We agree that the turning end of Sutherland Close South in Guildford needs to be changed to no parking for free driveway access, along with safe and free access to the adjoining walkways. Additionally, we request that up to 3 delineated parking bays be painted on the existing road to be placed near to the exit onto Stirling Street, Guildford. This is to alleviate narrowing and blocking of the close, along with safe views when transitioning into Stirling Street, Guildford. The parking bay delineation needs to set out in such a way to avoid blocking and clear view of footpaths and corners. Pedestrian traffic within the close also needs to be considered, as there are no footpaths and the close is used for foot access to the Swan Street and Terrace Road restaurant strip. So that's one petition.
Thank you.
The second petition is from 11 Jane Brook residents, but I just want to put on the record that there's probably going to be a few more signatures coming in on this one, simply because residents have for a number of years tended to their fire breaks with no problems, and this petition protests a change in our process that has caused a number of properties to suddenly be fined for something they were always happy to do, which is their fire breaks. So petitioners want these fines that they've been given waived, and they want the City of Swan to just work with them better on this issue. And the petition reads as follows. We, the undersigned, all being electors of the City of Swan, request the Council waive the infringements to the undersigned on the basis of inconsistent standards, lack of communication and willingness to work with owners when we haven't had any issues in the last 5 to 6 years of living in our properties. Creating excess unnecessary additional costs to owners with limited additional risk mitigants, as each property has adequate protection in place, which would have been seen if a proper inspection was completed by the City of Swan staff. Correspondence in respect to this petition should be addressed to the undersigned. So they've left their details here. The petition is a few pages long, and I'm not going to read all of it. It just includes examples from various properties to help staff. And it ultimately asks staff to consider a review of its processes here to properly consider the risk, benefit and cost to ratepayers.
Thank you. And your third one?
Petition number 3 is from Meadow Street residents in Guildford. There's 7 signatures here. And they say, we the undersigned, all being electors of the City of Swan, request the Council and City of Swan to improve the traffic conditions on the section of road between the roundabout at Swan Street and Barker's Bridge for residents, tourists, cyclists and pedestrians. In the interests of public safety, we would like improvements to be made in this section of Meadow Street to include, but not limited to, the following. 1, fixed damaged street lights and replacement of missing lights. 2, the creation of speed calming traffic systems on the section of road from Swan Street to Barker's Bridge. 3, replanting of trees already damaged by repeated accidents on the street. 4, reduction of heavy vehicles using the Heritage Precinct as a thoroughfare to Reid Highway or Great Eastern Highway, and an independent assessment on the loan ton weight ratio that Barker's Bridge should handle. 5, to have a holistic approach to the continual increase in traffic as residential areas going into the Swan Valley and beyond become high density. The concern as residents is we will be forced to deal with another fatality from either a driver, pedestrian, cyclist or unsuspecting tourist. The increase in accidents and incidents are unfortunately making this more like an inevitability than a possibility. We request the City of Swan undertake the changes needed to reduce driver frustration and acceleration in this heritage-listed residential area, as other councils have done in areas, for example, Old Perth Road in Bassendean and King William Street in Bayswater.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors or members of the public with any other further petitions? Being no further petitions, you're moving that they be accepted and go to the CEO to take the appropriate action. Councillor Henderson, seconded Councillor Parry. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare that carried, and if those petitions can be handed to staff, they'll get to the CEO. Thank you. Item 8, deputations, and as you're aware, deputations were heard at the agenda forum last Wednesday, the 1st of March. Item 9, announcements by the presiding member. There are nil. Item 10, members' questions, and 10.1, answers to questions which were taken on notice. And you'll note that, Councillor Bowman, your question's been answered in relation to the Averley Secondary College, I believe. It takes us to item 10.2, questions of which due notice has been given. Councillor Bowman, you had 2 questions which were answered on page 9 of the agenda. They're not on the run sheet. And Councillor Johnson, you had 3 questions which have been answered. Thank you. Item 10.3, questions which due notice has not been given, and your question, Councillor Johnson, has been answered in the run sheet. I'll ask any other councillors have any other questions. Councillor Johnson first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is a follow-up on my question in 10.3. Has any forensic analysis been done about the cause of decline in health of the trees?
Mr. Coaten?
Well, an assessment has been done of the trees as outlined in the answer and the previous answer with some remedial measures put in place, but the actual cause of I think if you're asking what actually caused the deterioration, the report didn't indicate the actual cause of it.
Just to follow up, I didn't quite understand that. So you're saying the report does not indicate the actual cause?
Oh, the report indicated some remedial measures to be undertaken, but I think are you asking what actually caused the condition to
Yes.
decline? The reason why it declined? Is that the report didn't go into that level of detail. I'm not quite sure what exactly you're
I've had
asking.
members of the community asking me if any kind of scientific forensic analysis has been done to determine what is the cause of the decline of 3 trees so close together.
Yeah. Oh, it might be. I might perhaps just. I'll take that on notice. It doesn't. I don't think it answers the question. I might just discuss it with you outside of this meeting and just explain to you what was actually in the report and see if that addresses what you're asking.
Councillor Zanino.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have a question. Can staff advise whether the traffic modelling study for Henley Brook Avenue has been completed? This is RFT 21CH47 as advertised August 14th, 2021. And if the modelling has been completed, when will the report be presented to council?
Mr Curtin, thank you.
We don't have it's going to come to a briefing session before a report. My understanding is that the consultant has submitted the information on the traffic modelling to the city, which is currently being assessed. Prior to that coming back to council, we also are waiting on a decision from the minister in regards to the future of that road. So it's not actually possible to put a timeline on that at the moment.
I'll ask, are there any other councillors have questions? Being no further questions, takes us to item 12, leave of absence. I have 2 lots of leave of absence before me. I have 4 requests from Councillor Congerton, and his leave requests are from the 29th of March to the 2nd of April inclusive, from the 10th of May to the 21st of May this year inclusive, from the 23rd of May to the 27th of May inclusive, and from the 6th of August to the 9th of August this year inclusive. And I have one from the 29th of March this year to the 4th of April this year inclusive. Are there any other requests for leave of absence? Councillor Jones. Last week or tonight? I just need to read it out then so it gets adopted. I'll just wait till I get the form. I'll read it out because we need a council resolution. Thank you. I have a further request for leave of absence, and that's for this month, Councillor Jones, or for next month. From Councillor Paddy Jones from the 5th to the 13th of April inclusive. Are there any others, councillors? Then I need a resolution. You're moving to accept that, move that way, Councillor Parry. You're second, Councillor Zanino. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare those leave periods carried. Takes us to item 12, confirmation of the minutes, and 12.1, confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 8th of February 2023. I'm looking for a motion, councillors. You're moving the adoption of the minutes, Councillor McCulloch. Seconded, Councillor Zanino. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare that item carried. Item 13, any business left over from the previous meeting? There is nil. Takes us to part B, and item 1 in part B, adoption of those recommendations contained in items not withdrawn. For the benefit of members observing the meeting, the City Swan Council uses an en bloc method for decision making. This means that agenda items where council supports the officer's recommendations are not debated separately. One vote is taken on all of the items and the officer recommendation is therefore the decision of this council. The following items have not been withdrawn for individual consideration and will be dealt with via an en bloc vote. Therefore, the officer's recommendation will be the decision of council. In Part B, that's items 2.2, 3.2, 4.1, 4. Thank you. 4.2, 5.3, 6.1, 6.2, 7.2, and in Part C, C 3.1 and C 3.2. I'll just note that in item 6.2, the financial management report was being adopted en bloc, so it'll be an absolute majority. So I need a move. You've got a question first, Councillor Bowman.
Mr Mayor, I understand you can't move on block items that a council's got a financial interest in, which require 3.2 to be withdrawn. I also understand you can't move on block any items that requires an absolute majority, which C 3.1 would be required. And I also note that C 6.2 is not an absolute majority. So on that basis, 3.2 and C 3.1 would both be required to be removed and dealt with separately, if my correction is right.
I'm not sure about the one on C, 3.2. Councillor Zanino declared a financial interest in that, so he should not be in the chamber.
Needs
So
to leave.
I,
Councillor Zanino needs to leave.
yes, but can it be then done on block, or do we have to withdraw it?
We'd have to, I think, withdraw it.
Thank you. So item 3.2 will be withdrawn and go into those items that have been withdrawn. You were saying, Councillor Bowman, that 6.2, absolute majority can't be done by en bloc voting.
I'm saying my understanding is absolute majority can't be, but 6.2 is not an absolute majority. If one looks at the report, it's a simple majority, but C 3.1 is an absolute majority and as such would have to be dealt separately
Okay,
as
then I
well.
have to apologise. I'm just going off the run sheet I've been provided. So 6.2, I can just confirm that it's not required to be an absolute majority. Then that'll,
Yep. I confirm that, that's correct.
so that can be dealt with en bloc.
Yes.
And then item C 3.1 will have to be withdrawn because it requires an absolute majority, and that'll move to the next part of the agenda. So with the removal of item 3.2 and C 3.1, do I have a mover for those other items? Move Councillor Bowman, seconded Councillor Johnson. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare those carried. And just give me a moment so I can write those other two items down. Thank you. That takes us to the next page. So the following reports from Part A, B and C have been withdrawn for debate in accordance with Meeting Procedures Local Law 2019 and will be dealt with council individually. And they are in Part A, nil. In Part B, items 2.1, 2.3, 3.1, 3.2, 5.1, 5.2, 6.3, 6.4, 7.1, 7.3, and in Part C, item C 3.1, item, and in Part C also C 1.1 and C 1.2. That takes us to the first item, which is item 2.1, Grant and Financial Assistance Framework and Policy C176, City Grant and Sponsorship Funding. It's on page 14 of the agenda, councillors. Councillor Bowman, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I move the council resolves to 1, as per the office recommendation, with the following change to recommendation 2, place 99,999 with 19,999 and 99 and replace 100,000 above with 20,000 above in the agreement threshold for ad hoc or direct funding agreements in item 8. Record the reason for change. Accountability and transparency are important within the decision-making process, especially with any ad hoc or direct funding agreements.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Knight. Is there anyone against? There is. You wish to debate it? Thank you. You've got 5 minutes, Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, there's been quite a bit of discussion lately regarding increasing the amount of delegation to the CEO to streamline, and this agenda is evident of that. If there's no garage or patios, etc. planning. However, increasing delegation, there must be clear rules and policies in place which are adopted by council, as this gives confidence to us that what has been delegated will be determined in accordance with these rules policies. After all, no staff member, not even the CEO, can go against a council policy. Only council can. Councillors, an ad hoc one-off grant or funding is very difficult to include in the policy, simply because it doesn't fit into any of the other funding streams. Therefore, there is no guidance provided to the CEO in what the council would want to approve or not approve. As such, I strongly believe it's even more important that this type of funding grant is very open and accountable. And as such, I have a strong view that the delegation amount to CEO should not be up to 99,999 and should only be 19,999. Any community organisation or group that is wanting an ad hoc grant funding not covered by the funding streams over $20,000 should have some fairly detailed plans and would have been discussing with staff. Therefore, it is reasonable that part of the process that council approves and this is not delegated to the CEO. The policy, in my opinion, is reasonable. However, I cannot say the same about the framework. I doubt that this is what the auditors were thinking when they strongly suggested an overarching framework. I still look at this on page 19 and feel that the detail is missing, especially when it appears half the page has been cut off, but I'm advised that nothing is. There could have been some improvements to the policy in being more open and accountable. For example, why did this council not previously agree to start publishing the details of grants and sponsorships? A reminder, this was a motion previously raised that was not supported and from memory not supported by any other councillor. In the report, staff indicate that they intend to start commencing in October 2023. When I suggested this was because it will be a legislative requirement in accordance with Amendment Bill advice from the CEO indicated this wasn't. I refer councillors to clause 78 of the Amendment Bill, which is insert a new section 5.96b, which will mandate that certain information will be required to publish on the local government website. Included in this is a register of grants and sponsorships given by a local government. We'll be required to do it. This item was previously delayed at the August 2022 council meeting as the council resolved to request staff to develop an overarching funding framework that is to be supported with policy and procedures. I do not agree that part missing document, page 19, is an overarching framework and therefore cannot see how the administrator has provided what council has resolved. I therefore against the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Knight as a seconder.
I have nothing to add, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parry, wish to speak again?
Sorry about that. Accountability and transparency are important in the decision-making process. I remember a debate that we had in November last year. Okay, sorry. So,
Please continue.
thank you. Accountability and transparency. Isn't this the same council that increased DOA for CEOs from 1 million to 5 million in November last year? Don't we all remember that? See, this is the quite ironic thing. You're willing to increase your DOA for the CEO to do any procurement items, but then decrease your DOA, delegation of authority, for grant funding. Now, it can't be either or. You've got to make a decision in regards to how you want to perform your delegation of authority. And that's the key to this issue. Because right now, we had an 11-4 vote to increase the value of delegation of authority to the CEO, and now we wish to decrease it. It makes no absolute sense. And in regards to community funding or grants and etc., a lot of these are small organisations that require the flexibility and often need the money quicker than what businesses do. So, for example, if you have a Christmas function or something like that in December, or you need to do it in December, you need the money by probably October, November. If you have to wait for a council meeting to happen, It will take a month, 2 months, 3 months later, and it makes their cash flow or makes their proposal less viable because they need the funds at that point of time or months before to pay the suppliers. So it's quite important to give the CEO or the staff the flexibility necessary to have the funds now when they need it. That's why I can't support it. $100,000 is a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of everything that we do within the City of Swan, honestly, it's not that much. It's less than 0.001% of the total revenue received by the City of Swan, which in context is not much. And giving 0.001% of the total revenue base for CEO is reasonable, in my opinion. That's why I can't support Councillor Bowman's position.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Speakers against the motion. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor McCulloch.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Speaking against the motion. Councillors, we do have clear rules and policies in place. This motion, I believe, actually doesn't align with the requirements of the policy before us. It may appear to contradict it. Going to council more often for these kinds of decisions where a delegation has been given continues to add to a workload that detracts from main business of our roles of government and our strategic and visionary focus. Again, really, the officer's recommendation, it lines up with the CEO's delegated authority for procurement, goes hand in hand. As I've said, this amendment or motion with this part 1, it doesn't align with those requirements of the policy, and we'd be dealing with some part operational decision making when the delegation is practical. So I don't believe it's good practice that we are looking at reducing this amount, and I think that there are some considerable implications on workload as well. And if you also have a look and peruse the officer comment, you will see that those limited funding amounts that may become required to meet community needs, retaining those current approval limits are completely reasonable. So if this motion fails, I will be foreshadowing the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor McCulloch. Are there any other speakers for or against?
Got a question.
Question, Councillor Johnson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, could any of the staff give us some advice on what sort of, give examples of what sort of ad hoc or direct funding agreements need such a large amount of money?
Mr. Bishop.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. There have been a number of examples over the years where council have made decisions, often contrary to the staff recommendation, to request the CEO provide funding to an organisation, a community organisation, to deliver an outcome. A couple of examples that come to mind were the Radio Ellenbrook, when there was a request, council made a resolution for the CEO to go away and come up with a funding arrangement to enable that outcome to be delivered. I can't remember the exact details, but I think it's to do with radio equipment, transmission equipment, which is absolutely fair enough. Another one that comes to mind was the State Equestrian Centre decision, where council resolved that it wanted some infrastructure support put in whilst longer term solutions were provided. From recollection, again, it was along the lines of the CEO to go and enter into a funding arrangement. In those sort of situations, we apply a grant process. We negotiate with the organisation, come up with the acquittal requirements, enter into a grant funding agreement, and proceed from there. This sort of arrangement, subject to whatever the value being under $100,000 or under $99,999, would enable the city and the CEO to execute that directly.
Thank you. I'll ask, are there any other speakers? Then you're right to reply. Thank you, Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I've heard a lot of nothing really in the debate. Some serious implications. What serious implications? I didn't hear about that. A number of examples. I heard 2 examples. Both of those examples came to council. It was a council decision. Councillor Parry talked about what happens if someone needs it urgently for a Christmas party. Well, I'd have serious concerns if our CEO on delegated authority was proving a grant funding of somewhere between 20,000 and 100,000 for a community group for a Christmas party. There's clear policies and guidelines in place, I heard. No, there's not. Read the policy. The policy talks about the funding streams, but then it talks about if it doesn't fit into that, it's ad hoc. That covers everything else. Councillor Parry talked about, well, one way we're increasing, one way we're reducing. They are 2 totally different things, councillors. The procurement is as per the budget that is adopted by council. Councillors, I've heard 2 examples only that this may be impacted. Both of them came to council, and now some councillors think, no, we shouldn't be involved in anything because the in word now is fingers out. Well, councillors, this is our role. And as such, I've moved this recommendation.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion. Those in favour. I have Councillor Bowman, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Singh, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight and Councillor Richardson, which is 7. The motion fails. Those against were Councillor Jones, Councillor Podovnik, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson and Councillor McCulloch. The motion was lost 8 votes to 7. Councillor McCulloch, you foreshadowed the officer's recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jones, is there anyone against? Do you wish to debate it? Don't wish to debate it, I'll put it straight to the vote. Those councillors in favour of the officer's recommendation, I have Councillor Jones, Councillor Podovnik, Councillor Singh, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson and Councillor McCulloch, which is 9. The motion is passed. Those against were Councillor Bowman, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight and Councillor Richardson. The motion is passed 9 to 6. Thank you, councillors. That takes us to the next item. Item 2.3, Policy Review, Organisation, Structure and Designated Senior Employees on page 54 of the agenda. I'm advised Councillor Bowman you wish to speak against the officer's recommendation, but first I need a mover and a seconder. Move Councillor Parry, second Councillor Congdon. Thank you. You wish to speak against it. Do you wish to open the debate, Councillor Parry? You reserve that right. Councillor Congdon is the seconder. No, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, personally, I don't care what the exec managers are called. And if the change of title attracts more and better candidates, then this should be a positive for the City of Swan and for our residents and ratepayers. I do, however, provide the following observation. The City of Swan Exec Manager Corporate position being advertised is offering $30,000 more than the Director of Corporate at the City of Melville. I would have thought this would be what attracts a few more and potentially better candidates. All Tier 1 local governments, except one, refers to their senior position as directors, not exec directors. Every councillor here in this chamber that was a councillor in March 2021 voted without debate for the existing titles for the designated senior employees were retained as exec managers, with the exception of Councillor Richardson that wasn't present at that meeting. A recent job advert for the exec manager of corporate position was advertised instead of an exec director, advertised as an exec director instead of exec manager, and only council can vary or go against the council policy. But putting all that aside, as I referred to in my questions at Agenda Forum, no policy can change the primary function of legislation, nor can any local law. The Local Government Act is quite specific at section 5.2 that that councils ensure there is appropriate structure, i.e. this is council's responsibility. Clause 2.1b of the policy is trying to give this responsibility to the CEO, and this is simply not allowed. This is not only my view, but it's also one that's shared by the World Good Governance Advice. And as such, I cannot support the policy for us with section 2.1b in it.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. The job title is changes is interesting. If we have a chief executive officer and that title is in the legislation, then it stands to reason, councillors, that the people who report to the chief executive officer would be executive officers, not executive managers or executive directors. So it's my view that the proper job titles would be executive officer planning, executive officer. I can't remember what they all are. They would be executive officers, not managers or directors. So that's the reason I'm supporting Councillor Bowman's motion.
Thank you. Speakers for the motion. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Parry, you wish to exercise your right of reply?
Point to vote, Mr. Mayor.
You just wish to put it to the vote. Those in favour of the motion, the officer's recommendation, I have Councillor Jones, Councillor Podovnik, Councillor Singh, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino and Councillor McCulloch, which is 8. The motion is passed. Those against were Councillor Bowman, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight, Councillor Henderson and Councillor Richardson, which is 7. The officer's recommendation was passed 8 votes to 7. That takes us to the next item, councillors. It's item 3.1, Cassius Turvey Memorial. It's on page 60. Once again, Councillor Bowman wishes to speak against the item, so I need a mover and a seconder. Moving Councillor McCulloch, seconding Councillor Podovnik. Thank you. You're speaking against Councillor Bowman. You wish to open the debate, please, Councillor McCulloch.
I will reserve my right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Podovnik is the seconder. Sorry, you can't do that. No, okay, Councillor Bowman wishes to speak against.
Councillors, I acknowledge this item is a sensitive item that needs to be handled with care and respect. And in hindsight, perhaps previously should have been done behind closed doors, but for whatever reason, wasn't. Following on from my questions at last week's agenda forum, when I was not satisfied with the answers, as in my mind there appears to be still some unknown, as I personally still do not know what is being recommended, and there appears to be relevant information not provided by staff. I've heard that not all agree with the location. When I asked if this was correct, I didn't get what I thought was a definitive answer from staff, as a simple yes or no would have been reasonable. And perhaps the Mayor could provide further advice, since he was the one that made me aware of this issue. The report states that the costs are $30,000, of which $2,420 is for signage design, the rest being $27,580 if for construction of the sign and for installation. I asked for a breakdown of these two costs, which staff have now advised that since the agenda forum, they have a quote for $9,300 for the sign. What is the estimated installation cost? As surely this would have been sought as part of the process of writing the council report. Staff have now advised that they are confident that the total cost will be significantly below $30,000. What is actually being requested? When I asked at the agenda forum, the exec manager of community advised me and councillors that yes, it is as shown on page 68. If this is correct, I cannot support the motion for 2 reasons. 1, the report does not provide me with all the relevant information to make a fully informed decision. And for example, the cost of the sign and installing as shown on page 68 seems overpriced. 2, the most important reason, however, is that the sign on page 68 does not, in my opinion, provide the appropriate respect, as it to me looks like just another sign that is used to name parks, etc., which is evident from the example provided on page 65. What about the wording that is included on page 63? Courageous, respectful, sense of brotherhood and sisterhood, confident, kind, integrity, responsible, empowering, loyal, teamwork, sharing, trustful, supportive, encouraged leadership. These are strong and empowering words that should not be just written in a page, but should be for everyone to see. Where is the remembrance and reflection space, which I thought this was what was wanted? Surely we can do better.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers for or against the motion? And Councillor McCulloch, you're right to reply. Thank you.
Councillors, yes, this is a sensitive and fragile space that we're working in, with a tragedy that occurred in our community a number of months ago. But councillors, we've been kept updated, and I trust our city officers who have met with Michelle Turvey on numerous occasions to work through this memorial space. My motion, as I worked through that and spoke with and met with Michelle Turvey, was that the City of Swans Reconciliation Advisory Group work with Michelle Turvey. It was her request that they would liaise with her in memory of Cassius and look at what was the priority and what was of ultimate significance to Cassius. Michelle felt that as a mother of Cassius, she knew what he would want and what would be of greater benefit to the community, and her vision for the young people that he had played with, worked with, and grown up with. There was some mention in discussions where not all were accepting or had been in agreement to the location, but this motion again was around working with Michelle Turvey to look at what was best in this situation. So yes, it's a sensitive and fragile issue, and I applaud City staff for working sensitively with Michelle to come up with something that Michelle is wholly happy with, that she believes reflects aspects of her son's life and that will impart to young people as they visit the space.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion. Those in favour? I have Councillor Jones, Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Singh, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, and Councillor McCulloch. I'll make that 10. Those against are Councillor Bowman, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight, and Councillor Richardson. That is 5. The motion is carried 10 votes to 5. Thank you. That takes us to the next item, which is item 3.2, Place Office Review. It's on page 73 of your agenda. Councillor Zanino has declared a direct financial interest and is leaving the chamber. Once he's out of the chamber, I'll be seeking a mover and a seconder. Thank you, councillors. You're moving that way, Councillor Congdon. You're seconding, Councillor Bowman. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare that item carried. If we can recall Councillor Zanino to the chamber. The next item, I believe, will be item 5.1. It's on page 115, but I'll wait for Councillor Zanino to resume his seat. Thank you, Councillor Zanino. We're now moving to item 5.1, adequacy of sport facilities for female patrons on page 115. Councillor Bowman.
Mr Mayor, I'm going to be withdrawing my alternative as there was information not provided in the Office of Port that has now been provided. That makes mine redundant.
Thank you. You're withdrawing your motion. Councillor Henderson, I note you also have an alternative motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the council resolve to 1, add an item 3 to the officer's recommendation, and that is to continue to advocate at state and federal levels, seeking their assistance to provide for female change facilities that are needed at sporting grounds across the city of Swan. And the reason is that the state and federal support is needed due to increasing demand from growing female participation in sport. Assistance is needed to more rapidly support our facility improvement program.
Thank you. You're seconding that, Councillor Parry. Is there anyone against? You wish to debate it, Councillor Howlett?
No, briefly, yes.
Thank you. You can open your debate when you're ready, Councillor Henderson. You have 5 minutes.
Councillors, in regard to the officer's recommendation part of it, I fully support that, and in regard to my amendment, quite clearly we have significant amounts of money to pour into facilities like this, but we simply don't have the budget for it. And this is the fundamental. We'd love to go out there and have all of our ageing facilities and some of the really old ones. I can think of one on the northern part of Warwick Hill that Councillor Zanino and I would like to see improved. It comes down to the basics that we don't have the money. We have a responsibility to try and keep our cost of our rates low. We certainly have a responsibility to improve facilities, and the only way we can do that is with help. Federal government have had programs to support these kind of facilities, and I think we need to actively advocate for those so that we're able to provide the things that our community really want. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Second to Councillor Parry.
I'll be very brief, Mr Mayor. I think about 6 months ago I raised this motion, and the reason why I raised it was that I have a young daughter myself who wanted to play football in Balladura, and the biggest issue they had, and they still do in regards to Auskick and modified rules football, is the fact that there is no female change rooms in regards to Kingfisher Oval, and there's no change rooms in regards to Lions Oval, which is where modified rules is played in Balladura, which is a major concern because and I coach young girls as well. I have 4 girls, and I think about where they're going to improve their football knowledge so they can play AFLW, hopefully for all the Dockers, by the way. So basically, I coach these girls, and I want them to succeed and move up in under 18s, under 21s, Resis, WAAFL, AFLW, and we don't have the facilities necessary because in decades past it was a male-dominated sport. Football was a male-dominated sport. Basketball was a male-dominated sport. But now the tide has changed, and local government must move forward with this. And also the other reason why it's important state and federal funding we can advocate to them is very simple. They have more money than us as well. And also the AFL, in regards to the new media deal that they did with Channel 7, Foxtel and Kayo, they also set aside money in regards to funding for women's change rooms as well. So if we have this report and we understand what we need to do and we can advocate effectively, we can tap into funds like the local governments in Victoria are currently trying to do as well, which they just started off a program 4 months ago. We need to be at the forefront of this because otherwise And unfortunately, Victorian local governments will get the funding and we won't. So that's why we need to move forward with this. We need to be vigorous in our advocacy, and we should all move forward for all the young girls that want to play AFL, cricket, basketball, and all those sports that they should play. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion.
That'll be me, I guess. Thank you. Councillors, as a female on International Women's Day, I'd like to remind you all that we make up 50% of the population, and none of you were born without a mother. Many of you have sisters, aunties, wives. Anyway, we make up 50% of the population. We pay our rates. We as females belong to society. It's an all government affair. It's not tiered. It's not federal government related female business. It's not state government. It's not just local. We belong to every level of society. So Councillor Henderson said, we just don't have the budget for it. What do you mean? The budget for what? The budget for 50% of your population? Come on. It's 2023. Let's get with it. Councillor Henderson said, we don't have enough of the basics. Beg your pardon? I'll take that as, a sleight of tongue. Being a female isn't basic. It's a birthright. Thank you. Foxtel and KO. Councillor Parry says that, we should look to Foxtel and KO.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, that's not what I said. It was in regards to the media's right deal with the AFL. They provided the money necessary, and therefore it's not just that.
Thank you. I uphold the point of order. That's not what Councillor Parry said. He said there was funding streams available through those organisations, which we should try and tap into. Thank you. If you can please continue, Councillor Howlett.
Thank you. I apologise if I misquoted you then, Councillor Parry. I just took offence to what I thought I heard. The City of Swan should fund females' sporting facilities. We make up 50% of the population, as I've said many times, regardless of whether they want to play sports as young girls or they want to play them as 50-year-old women. It's irrelevant. So I do not support chasing state and federal funding when this is something that we should be doing on a council level when we do it for males. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Question, Councillor Catalano.
Yes, thank you. I might be missing something here, but why do we need to have separate change rooms? Why can't we have, like kind of unisex change rooms for players, people who use those facilities to play games? Are we talking about mixed games, which I don't believe is on the agenda for men and women, is it? It's about...
Mr. Coaten, thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll draw Councillor's attention to page 116 of the agenda. So the intention, sort of a bit of a definition of non-gender specific facilities includes partition showers, mirrors at hand wash basins, power points within the vicinity of hand wash basins, and removal of gender specific items such as urinals within change rooms. So that's the intention of it. The change rooms won't be gender specific, so could be used by males or females.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So why are we talking about female change rooms?
Because that was the specific resolution of council on page 115 at the ordinary meeting of the 7th of September 2022, and council requested that the CEO provide a report to council on the adequacy of sport facilities for female patrons, etc. And then it goes on.
Okay, sorry. And just then to confirm with you, what the city is looking for funding for is for basically unisex change rooms.
Mr. Curtin.
The intent of Councillor Henderson's amendment to the officer motion is to seek is to advocate for funding for the works that are outlined as part of the 10-year program.
You've got a question, Councillor Howard?
I have. I beg to differ. It states here that Councillor Henderson's motion is to continue to advocate at state and federal level seeking their assistance to provide for female change facilities. It doesn't state unisex. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Congdon, you had a question, you want to enter the debate? Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Councillors, I think here we're at the addition of item 3 is only a small part of 5.1.
Can you put your microphone on, please?
Councillor Henderson's point 3 or item 3 is only a small part of the overall officer's recommendation. And it's interesting when you make a comment, Councillor Howard, about 50% female, 50% male. There's no dispute that that is the particular case. And both federal and state governments have acknowledged that. So it's only fair, I think, in federal and state governments that they should turn around and assist any organisation, whether it be council or non-council, in a contribution of costs to deliver an equal provision for change rooms, regardless of the gender component. Interestingly, you talk about the advocacy program. The Mayor and I and one of the exec staff and the CEO actually met with Dr. Anne Alley, the Minister for Youth, and this very subject was raised with her. She was across it very well. She knew exactly what the problem was, and she gave an indication that she would look at the possibility of assisting in the funding moving forward as we get closer to the next round of financial deliberations they have in Canberra for funding of lots of things, but in particular this one. So I think this addition 3 goes to support that very thing that she gave an indication that was very important to her, and being the Minister for Youth is supportive in that realm. So this does not hurt in one way or the other to have this included in the Council's resolution. It can only assist moving forward.
Thank you. I'll ask, are there any other speakers? Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, firstly, I'd like to move an amendment, but and that would be to change the word female to unisex.
Is that acceptable to the mover and the seconder?
Can I ask a question of staff? The facilities we provide now, are they male, female, or are they generally all new facilities? I'm talking about new construction, new facilities. Are they unisex or are they male, female, separated?
Mr. Coaten?
Yeah, they are. All the new ones are unisex. They're not gender specific, but a number of our older pavilions are.
Yeah, I'm happy to accept that.
Thank you. So we're changing the substantive motion to remove the word female in the second line to unisex change facilities. No issues from the seconder. That's accepted. It becomes part of the substantive motion. You now wish to speak on it, Councillor Bowman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I think we all understand this is an issue that hasn't happened overnight. Female participation in sport has been increasing significantly in recent years. And perhaps we should have acted sooner. And look, I congratulate Councillor Parry for first raising this issue. Councillors, I have been told just this week, for example, there are women football players playing at EDOS that a small meeting room is used with a blanket held up to block the windows. This is simply not acceptable. Would you want your daughter, granddaughter, for someone around here, wives, or anyone else having to do this, as I know I wouldn't? You may have questioned why I withdrew my motion. I was trying to get those low-lying fruit, the small items, but the officer's report didn't include that they were actually going to be programmed in with part of a bigger renovation, because I wanted to get some of those done because I think we need to. I have got some concerns, but when I look back at what Councillor Parry's resolution was, or what his motion was, which we agreed to, and I don't think, in my views, that we provide what I'd call a report on the adequacy of sport facilities for female patrons, and that was the motion. We've got a little bit there, but it doesn't provide me with all the information. I'm happy to support the motion because I think it's a step forward. But councillors, have a look what we asked for. Do you think we got it? I don't think so. But it's just a question to ponder.
Thank you. I'll ask, are there any other speakers for or against the motion? No other speakers, your right to reply, councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. I don't really have a lot to add. It's, I think, been summed up quite well around the table. Just want to make one very significant point about where we are today. Today, we spend millions of dollars of ratepayers' money, millions, building facilities for sport. And that's fantastic. That's what the ratepayers want. We do, however, have quite a number of facilities that are old era. They simply are not up with today's systems and procedures and expectations. And I think Councillor Conklin nailed it on the head. It is something that the federal government are actively across. And for us to go to our ratepayers and say, we want you to spend piles more money, millions more money on improving facilities, when we have the opportunity to get funding and support and grants from other sources, would be very, very irresponsible. I want to see our young youth and of course even some of the older people that play sport have facilities that are acceptable for modern day purposes and expectations. So, councillors, I think the need is there, the opportunity is there, and we should progress that opportunity. I seek your support. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion. Those in favour of Councillor Jones, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Podovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Singh, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Richardson, Councillor McCulloch. I make that 13, with 2 against, being Councillor Howlett and Councillor Knight. Motion is passed 13-2. Thank you. That takes us to the next item, which should be item 5.2, petition response crosswalk request on the Broadway. It's on page 120 of your agenda. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I move that council resolves to 1, adopt the officer's recommendation with the following changes. Existing point 2 to be renumbered to point 4. Insert new point 2 as follows. That the city write to the Children's Crossing and Road Safety Committee requesting them to review their process to allow for children's crossings to be approved prior to constructions of roads so they can be designed and installed during the construction phase of projects. And 3, insert new point 3, that the city investigate interim signing to raise awareness to road users of student crossing. And the reason is there's more effective and efficient process to approve crosswalks in the detailed design and then build stage.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Richardson. Well, I saw your hand first, Councillor Richardson. Do you want to second it or not? Councillor Johnson, is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare that carried. Takes us to the next item, is item 6.3, 2022-23 budget review. It's on page 170. This item's been withdrawn, so Councillor Bowman can speak against it. I first of all need a mover and a seconder. You're moving it, Councillor Parry. I need a seconder. Councillor Congdon. And you wish to speak against it, Councillor Bowman. You reserve your right, the right to reply. Councillor Congdon, you wish to open the debate? No, Councillor Bowman, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I cannot support the officer's recommendation as we've been asked to adjust the budget after the facts. There are a number of items where there was either no budget or not enough budget, yet staff have already spent or committed the funds. This is not how it works. I remember from my local government days, it being drilled into me that if there is zero budget for any line item or account, then the administration cannot commit or spend any money for that line item without first getting council approval. Again, councillors, the process that I am accustomed to is if a project is tracking to be over budget amount and greater than the reported variances, then council approval will be sought before the budget was exceeded, and definitely not after it has been. Staff have indicated that we are to look at the nature and type level for variances and over budget amounts. The response provided when I questioned following an audit meeting the significant overspend on legal costs compared to budget for employee matters. What does all this mean? Well, a basic example would be if the city budgeted for 3 road projects, doesn't matter if they're construction or maintenance, and let's say each of the 3 have a budget amount of $1 million each. Project A gets completed at a cost of 2.5 million, which is significantly overspent. Project B doesn't even get started for whatever reason, and Project C is only half completed at a cost of $500,000. The total budget for these 3 projects was $3 million. The total expense has also been $3 million. Yet one project didn't even get to the start line, but more particular, another project is so far over budget. This will show that everything is okay. I have a completely different view from this very basic example. I understand that construction costs may have gone up and that the budgeting for particular items is a lot more difficult. But then again, this is the same for every other local government, metro, local government, especially the large ones. Why is it? And I've looked back over a number of years, which includes pre-COVID, and there's always a number of projects where the budget amount is so different to the actual amount. Some don't even come close. And why is it that the City of Swan councillors have been regularly asked to amend budgets after the expense has been committed or spent? Is this not what the auditors picked up a number of years ago as being a problem? The practice of overspending on budgets and or spending on items with no budget needs to be further examined. I said the same when I was first elected to council. I said the same again at last year's mid-budget review, and I'll keep saying it until the matter is properly addressed, in my view. It should go to the Audit and Risk Committee. In our roles as councillors, we need to be kept fully informed. We need to set thresholds. We need to be, for some of these decisions, be the ones making them, not staff. After all, one of our primary roles as a council is overseeing the finances. You don't do that after the fact.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion, Councillor Johnson. Okay, I'll ask any other speakers for the motion. Speaker against the motion, Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, in my view, Councillor Blimey is absolutely right. I'm coming from this from a different perspective as a project manager. So, as a project manager of capital works, in my case, software, not road building, but the same methods apply. When a project is approved, there is a document known as a project management plan or a project execution plan. And that acts as an agreement between the project manager and the organisation funding the works. The project manager is expected to manage that project within the budget. So it authorises the project manager to spend the money, but only the amount of money that has been allocated and for the purpose for which it's been allocated. If the project manager forecasts, and the operative word here is forecasts that the project is going to go over budget, then the necessary process is to create either a variation order or a change request, depending on what you want to call it. And that appears to me to be what is missing here. A good project manager should be able to say, I'm going over budget. I need to raise a change request. That would come up and that would trigger the budget variation. In my view, that's the proper process. Or alternatively, if a project manager determines that his project is going to go over budget by $300,000, say, and finds another project run by another project manager that's going to be under budget by that amount or greater, then could possibly produce 2 change requests, one of which reduces one budget by $300,000 and increases the other budget by $300,000. But still, it needs to go up and be approved. So, councillors, I think it's an indication that we need to be, I think our staff need to look carefully at the project management processes and how those are aligned with the accounting and the budget. So although I've spoken against, I'm going to vote for the officer's recommendation because I still think we need to go ahead with this. But I think, as Councillor Bowman says, we should not be doing this retrospectively in future. I think the CEO should be sure that that well-documented, well-understood industry standard project management processes are followed in future. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers for or against? Being no other speakers, Councillor Parry, you wish to exercise your right of reply?
All right, councillors. So page 164 to 167, please, if you don't mind. Every single project is listed in our financial report. It's all listed there. How much more reporting do you want? If you have a problem with any overspending with a project, every month it's moved on block. July on block, August on block, September on block, October on block, November on block, December on block, January on block. No comment even made about these projects until now. If you truly care about financial responsibility, raise these issues. I've raised many questions with Kim in regards to overspend before. There's no issues in regards to that. Yet I find it quite funny, just when it's mid-year review, we all sit there and say, it's a travesty, it's terrible, and all those things, when the report's already there. Page 163 of our current report shows the capital spend profile. Pages 164 lists every single project, including overspend. Yes, overspend included as well, councillors. It's listed there. If you have a problem with overspend, councillors, raise it every month with the staff. You have that opportunity. Don't just wait to the mid-year review and say it's an absolute travesty the way they're doing it, because you have the opportunity all the way through. So let's put it to a vote, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now put the motion. Those in favour of Councillor Jones, Councillor Brodovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Singh, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Richardson and Councillor McCulloch, which is 11. The motion is passed. Those against were Councillor Bowman, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Catalano and Councillor Knight. The motion is passed 11 votes to 4. Thank you, councillors. That takes us to the next item, which is item 6.4. It's on page 187 of your agenda. Councillor Henderson. It's the proposed introduction of vacant rate categories.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that council resolve to refuse the introduction of vacant land rate categories for 2023-24. To record the reason is the proposal has not been in the public for consideration, and that it is an unwarranted imposition on landowners that already pay their taxes, such as land tax, on top of their existing vacant rate land rates.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Congdon. Is there anyone against? You wish to debate it? Thank you. You can open your debate. Thank you, Councillor Henderson.
Councillors, I'm intrigued as to why and how this has come up. In the first instance, when we propose these kind of things, we usually go through a process. And the process is, do we talk to people about it and find out what they think about it? Or do we just simply go out there and say, we're going to do this, and bang, they've got you. I think the issue here is that I so often hear people say, oh, well, it's business, it's a tax deduction. Well, fundamentally, it's not a tax deduction, it's an outright bill, and that's a cost to bottom line. That's a cost to the process of maybe employing another person. It's a cost of perhaps a pay rise for staff. It's a cost to every other aspect of business. Importantly, I think that the key thing here is that business already pays massive amounts of taxes. If you are commercial, you pay a significant rate in the dollar over and above the normal domestic rate. If you're industrial, man, do we get stuck into you? We really charge big time. So there's that cost to business. And then to top it all off, you've got every single tax you can think of associated with your land that basically draws down on your ability to stay in business or even perhaps make a profit. So that's round one in terms of the cost of business. But let's get down to the human aspect. I might have bought a couple of blocks of land for my children to build a house on, as an example. It's a long-term superannuation type thing that I'm going to grant to the kids one day, as an example. And we're going to turn around and effectively tax people for their future considerations. Well, I think that's wrong. I think we shouldn't do that kind of thing. The important thing here is that in the overall scheme of things, the number of properties that fit within this are relatively small. But effectively, the tax we're actually considering to apply here is it's significant. It's quite a large amount of money to gain from the community. So I'm sure in debate that others will bring up other circumstances around where they see the inequities, but they're just a couple of examples. Councillors, rather than labour this, I think the important thing here is to understand that you simply can't tax people off their land. And effectively that's what this is doing. It's saying if you've got some land for some particular purpose, it might be for land banking. I'd say the circumstances around that in individual blocks all over the place would not necessarily be that. I'd say that'd be for a whole pile of personal reasons. And I don't believe we should be attacking that. Now, there was some discussion around rural land. You've got to remember too that some rural land switches from rural to deferred urban and then urban. And the transition can in fact, in my view, end up costing the developer a lot of money. Well, guess what? They'll then have to transition that over to the buyer.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. They'd have to then transition that over to the buyer. So I don't think that's been adequately thought out as well in the longer term. So councillors, I think we've got to consider what we're doing here. Seriously, I don't think it's timely. I don't think it's right. I don't think we should be doing these kinds of things without a lot more thought and a lot more preparation.
Thank you. Councillor Congdon as a seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, I am vehemently opposed to this, vehemently. And yes, I do own land in the city of Swan. But thankfully, I think that's going to be resolved in the next 2 months when the house will be finished. If you have a look at the paperwork that was sent to you by Zoe Hooper on the Wednesday, the 1st of March, you would be alerted to the number of properties that are vacant across the city of Swan. And for those who perhaps don't have that information sitting in front of you, let me talk about Averley, 248, Bennett Springs, 131, Brabham, 848, Brigadoon, 41, Borsbrook, 217, Caversham, 245, Ellenbrook, 656, Henlybrook, 160, Midvale, 243, and I haven't told you all of them because there is such a long, extensive list. If we take the Pierce Ward and those numbers I've just given you, a little over 25% are not identified as being LWP or any other large building entity that have got land ready to go on the market to be sold to first home buyers. And one could expect the reason why that isn't the case is because of the constraints currently happening in the building industry. You can't, for love nor money at the moment, get a builder to build your house. It took me, and I'm into my 18th month, 18 months to build my house. I don't think anyone in this room would understand the word holding cost. I own 20.
What's your point of order, councillor?
I take offence to.
Well, then I'll withdraw it, councillor, and there may be some councillors in the room that do understand holding costs, but there may be some that may not. I have land holdings in other jurisdictions.
Points of order, Mr. Mayor. That's not completely withdrawing that because councillor competence implying that some of us don't understand.
Mr. Mayor, I withdraw it completely because I don't want to get into the argy-bargy of.
Thank you. Please continue, councillor.
So I have land holdings in other authorities. It's taken 5 years to get to the development stage. 5 years to get to the development stage. I had land in Ballajura, and that took 4 years to get to the development stage because the state government put a moratorium on developments. We don't know what the future brings in terms of the restrictions sitting around this. But more importantly, it's a tax on a tax on a tax. If you've got holding costs, you're paying the bank for the privilege of the land. If you're looking at a building to go on it, there is the cost to do that. There is the rates you already pay where you are and the rates currently on the land that you hold. And I think we need to take into consideration that the intent of this, and I remember the intent very well, was around homeless people and people who couldn't find accommodation. And we spoke about Midland in particular. 143 properties in Midland are currently vacant, 243 in Midvale. But what we don't know is who owns them. Are they land bankers? Does one company own 100 lots, or is it spread across 143 ownership? We don't know. And then you start talking about commercial properties, Mr. Mayor. Commercial properties, 49 in Malaga. Are we going to tax those people in Malaga who've got properties in Malaga in a commercial district that probably find it so expensive to put a building on that land that they can't afford to do it? And they know they don't want to sell the land. They want to keep the land to a point they can't afford to put a building on that land. And if you were to run down the list that was provided to you, you're talking about vacant properties to 5 years. Averley, 200. Midland, 12. Malaga, 49. And the list goes on. I can't support this being another imposition to anyone who owns lands. And I certainly take on board the comments by Councillor Henderson. Anyone in this room that wanted to buy a block of land for their child when they're in their mid-30s and can afford to do so on the never, and then proceed to want to give it to their child when they're 25, 26, you will tax them out of doing that. They couldn't afford it.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Bowman.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to first ask a question, if I may.
Please ask.
I just want to clarify, does this motion impose any rate, or is it purely recommending that we seek community feedback?
Ms. Lay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this motion or the resolution, the recommendation to council is, if resolved, would continue the rates modelling process and incorporate these categories as part of that process, which would come to council in May for approval to advertise for public comment.
Thank you.
So am I correct? It doesn't impose any rate, this motion as is?
At this time, no.
Okay. And the reason I ask, Mr. Mayor, is because Section 563(1)(b) is interesting there, because if we're not opposing, well, then 563(1)(b) may not be actually relevant, but I didn't declare an interest in that, so that's not my concern.
Mr. Mayor, at the December council meeting, council resolved unanimously, and Councillor Henderson said doesn't know where it come from. Councillor Congress said he vehemently is against it, but we resolved unanimously, with the exception of you, Mr. Mayor. You declared a financial interest and therefore did not participate in the debate, to request the CEO prepare a report on the benefits of and what is required to introduce a separate rating category for vacant land other than rural zone land. The other than rural zone land was an amendment done by Councillor Henderson. If any councillor did not support the idea then, I question why didn't we vote against it then? So we fast forward 4 months. Staff have now written the report, and I believe it's a very thorough report. And they have recommended progressing with the introduction of vacant land rate. This is not something new, with the vast majority of Tier 1 metro local governments having had this in place for a number of years. So perhaps...
Point of order, Mr Mayor, please.
What's your point of order, please?
I'd like some clarification in relation to a large number of Tier 1 local governments having this in place. My understanding, Mr Mayor, is not the case.
Ms Lowe, can you...
Through you, Mr Mayor, I don't have the information in front of me, but this was part of the benchmarking that was provided a couple of weeks ago at the budget workshop.
Thank you. Can you answer that, Councillor Bowman?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for that interruption. So perhaps the question should be, why hasn't Swan? Nearly 50% of new housing is supposed to come from infill, yet the target is not even close to being achieved, which creates further sprawl, which significantly impacts local governments like us, the City of Swan. A higher rate for vacant land is an incentive to develop the land. Vacant land often results in illegal dumping of rubbish, fire hazards, or antisocial behaviour. The costs of addressing these are often borne by other ratepayers. Is that fair? There is vacant land, for example, in Midland that was vacant 20 years ago on Morrison Road. I nearly did, and I should have back then bought it for $34,000. What has this contributed to the city? This motion, as I said before, is not committing the city to adopting a vacant land rate, but if carried, would be then advertised for community comment. Let's hear what our community has to say on this, and not just the 15 councillors, some who would be directly impacted financially as they own vacant land. It's all I ask.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Question, Councillor Catalano.
My question is, we're talking about vacant land and not vacant buildings.
Vacant land.
Vacant land, yes.
Question, Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, I've got a question as well. I just want to verify or determine through different kinds of vacant land. So if there is a vacant block on, for example, a Movida estate in Midvale, is that going to be rated differently to a vacant block in a part of Midvale where a house has been demolished? So is a piece of land that is vacant that's had a house demolished on it in the older part of Midvale, is that going to be taxed differently to something on Movida estate, assuming that the block size is identical and all other factors are identical? Is there a substantive difference there?
I don't believe so, but I'll defer to Ms Lay.
Through you, Mr Mayor. The mitigating factor which we spoke about previously with council to try and address the issue of delays to buildings would be at lodgement of a building licence application, that they would be removed from the proposed vacant land category and put back to improved because they had applied for a building licence.
It's typically somebody in Movida estate who's got 300 square metres to build on is going to choose a project house and apply for a building permit pretty much immediately. Is that how you'd see it working?
Through you, Mr Mayor, this process, by having that mitigating factor in about the lodgement of a building application, would require quite a lot of data monitoring and good processes once those building licences are approved, and then assess that against the rates database to keep it up to date.
Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers for or against the motion? Councillor Catalano.
Yes, thank you. We've heard a lot of discussion here tonight about the cost to business, but what about the cost to communities? Mums and dads who've spent a lot of their hard-earned savings, and they're going to be spending their future income on their properties in, that are going to be sitting next to vacant blocks. And the point is that these vacant blocks negatively impact on the resale value of their properties. Now, yeah, there's constraints in the industry now, but the fact is that the people of Dayton had to wait, well, 7 years at least that I know of, for basically a derelict and rubbish-strewn site that was earmarked for a shopping centre to actually be dealt with and sorted out once I got on council. How long was that going to continue for until some action was taken? Could have been, forever. That's why we need to have these incentives to actually have that property dealt with. And I believe that Dayton shopping centre site is now going to be turned into residential because there's a need for residential. Okay, there wasn't the need for the shopping centre, but there's always going to be a need for using land in the appropriate way. And there's no excuse to land bank when the surrounding community is negatively impacted. The mums and dads purchasers of land who find that their resale value is negatively impacted. And then I'll turn your mind also now to Caversham. The number of inquiries I've had from people who've lived in Caversham now for, close to 12, 15 years. When are those sand blocks? And there's a number of them, large sand blocks in the centre of Caversham. When are they going to be developed? Because why? It's unsightly. It's strewn with rubbish and, grass and weeds, and it just looks like the suburbs unfinished, unkempt, and that affects their resale value. That owner of that property needs to have an incentive to get on with it. If they don't want to do it themselves, they sell on, they make their money, and then they go and, invest in something else. It isn't a problem to provide for your children in the future. You don't need to leave empty blocks lying around in city centres or in the middle of our suburbs, right, just to provide for your children, because you can go and buy something now that might actually have a building on it, rent it out, sell it, then you can go and buy your children a better property later on. It's a poor excuse. It's land backing. It's taking advantage of mums and dads who actually invest and put all their goodwill and their heart and their soul into their communities. And what have they got? They've got fly-strewn, litter-strewn empty blocks because some commercial owner wants to wait for an opportune time. But they're contributing to the fact that there is no opportune time. So that's why we need to have this incentive now. And that we've already mentioned about Midland. Look at Midland. It is absolutely full of this kind of urban blight. People who are sitting on empty blocks thinking it's going to be worth $1 million one day. No, it isn't. Not if everybody in Midland sits on an empty block. It's not worth anything. So it's time we got with the program.
1 minute left, thank you.
Yeah, it's time we got with the program and actually put an incentive in place so that we can actually get some of this infill development that we're supposed to be providing for, the city, so it doesn't end up sprawling beyond Bullsbrook and, creating these livable urban spaces. We need this incentive and we need it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers for or against the motion? Councillor Howlett.
I don't wish to take up too much time because I think a lot's been covered. What I see in Midland on vacant lots is shopping trolleys, basically, and not much else. On International Women's Day, again, I draw your attention to women over 55 becoming the most homeless in our population. Tonight's argument against this motion has come from a very privileged position, and having been a single parent for 18 years, raising 3 children, working full time, I was never in that privileged position to be able to afford
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
a
There's no way
plot
in
of
the
land
Point of order.
for my children.
Sorry, councillor
land
Howlett, I have to ask you to resume your seat until I ask what the point of order
You
is.
can't presume what a privileged position is unless you know everything to do with it. I
Yes.
think that's a very unfair comment and statement to make about other councillors.
Yes,
So
thank
they
you.
don't know everything that goes on in your life. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask you to withdraw that last statement, councillor Howlett, and
Thank you. I
make
withdraw
your-
that and I
make your
apologise.
comments relevant to the debate before
Thank you.
us.
So my comment is that what I see on vacant land is shopping trolleys, and I don't see the infill that we are meant to be having. And I relate to Midland Guildford ward because that is the ward that I represent and the ward that I live in. Vacant land that has nothing but weeds and shopping trolleys affects the community spirit. It affects civic pride. It attracts homeless camps, of which I have had to call the police on many times and notify city staff. It attracts shopping trolleys and it lowers the capital value of the area. I think we must support this motion. It is purely to the staff recommended. I think it's a great motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Podovnik?
Yeah, I just find this astonishing that we're even considering putting a tax on blocks of land when people are just really struggling now. Families are really struggling with the cost of living. I mean, if you just turn on the television this week, it's news story after news story after news story. Here we are talking about levying another tax on people. I just find it absolutely extraordinary. I mean, the idea that this is an incentive, it's not an incentive. This is a big stick approach. You know, build or, you know, you're really going to just have to keep paying through the nose. You know, I mean, I just find this to be, again, extraordinary. We have moved from let's get a report to council, let's get a bit more information to, okay, let's vote this in. And rest assured, if we vote this in, we're starting a ball rolling where it's going to be rolling down a path where we're going to roll out these rates and we're going to increase these charges for families and for people. Now, we don't know these personal circumstances at all. We don't have an appeals process in place. We've just decided, let's just go down this road. And there's lots of comments and people have made, but I just want to draw people's attention to this one. It says there's always going to be an odd case where development has been delayed unusually long due to extenuating circumstances. We need to look at an appeals process to make sure we're not causing people unnecessary hardship. There's no appeals process of what we're discussing here tonight. There's no incentives. There's just increase the tax for people. So, I mean, the least we should do is discuss this in a briefing. If there's any merit to this, we need to have a look at it properly. We need to break this down. We need to unpack it. We need to have a look at what it is that we're trying to achieve. What is the problem? Have we identified what the problem is? Is it really land banking? What is it exactly that we're trying to tackle here? It just feels like we're shooting from the hip and somebody's going to have to pay heavily. And one person said, my personal experience in getting a building permit was lengthy and costly. So we're talking about telling people to get a building permit within 2 years. Well, this person saying he couldn't do it, he said it was nearly enough to pull out of the build and sell the land, and that was vacant previously for 4 years. So people are struggling. I think it's just too glib to even support this. I find it just appalling.
Thank you. You have a question, councillor Bowman?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, councillor Podovnik said perhaps we should have a briefing on it first. Can I ask, have we already had a briefing on this, or am I thinking of another thing?
Ms Slade?
Through you, Mr Mayor, this report was explained at the budget workshop a few weeks ago.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I just want to clarify, we touched on it through a briefing session and when we asked questions, we didn't go into detail.
Thank you. I'll ask, are there any other speakers either for or against the motion? Councillor Parry?
I'm against it, Mr Mayor, and the reason is very simple. I find the report quite general in regards to it, and there was a lack of consideration from a planning aspect in regards to it. I asked Mr Vanderlyn in regards to whether he was notified about this, and he said he wasn't, which gives me grave concerns because there should be key levers and key requirements in regards to what we should decide as land banking. Is those rates provided in that report from every single vacant land that we have? Is it over 5 years? Does it include change of law required by statute? Are there latent conditions in regards to it? For example, asbestos, PFAS, etc. All those things that could be contributing factors in regards to delay of contract and all those things. And all those things are relevant because of the fact that you may have vacant land with PFAS and other things and latent conditions that you can't get rid of. and takes an extraordinary amount of time, an extraordinary amount of money that they simply can't afford. And you just can't control that. It's as simple as that. So if we have parameters or different scope or requirements in regards to this motion, then it could possibly be supported. But at this point in time, it's too general. Therefore, I can't support a new tax on people where there are no other requirements other than it's just vacant land. I think that's fundamentally wrong. Taxes should be specific and targeted in regards to what is required. You just can't put general sweeping statements in regards to it. You must be considerate when you charge a new mega tax like this. It is not clearly defined. It is not well scoped, and therefore I can't support it.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against, councillors? Councillor Johnson, you got a question?
No, I want to speak, Mr. Mayor.
You haven't spoken already?
Correct. I've not
Thank you.
spoken already. So,
Please continue.
Well, that's quite unusual, Mr. Mayor. But first of all, council, I'd just like to begin by saying I'm somewhat surprised by the level of emotionality in this debate. And I should also begin by saying I don't own any vacant land, not any at all. And my parents did not leave me any land, and nor am I intending to give any vacant land to my child. I also think that the suggestion of land being held in superannuation funds is not appropriate for here. But councillors, other Tier 1 councils do this. And information was sent around by the CEO that he'd compiled previously that indicated that nearly every other Tier 1 council was doing this. Some were, I seem to recall a figure of the maximum additional was something like 86 or 89. It's 89 as I remember it. It was quite a high number. So this is not an unusual thing to do. Councillors, we're not taxing the mums and dads buying in Movida and Brabham, and I certainly wouldn't be supporting it if we did. As it says in the report on page 188, this could be mitigated by amending the rates category where the building licence application is lodged. And you can be pretty sure on Movida Estate, if the mums and dads buy their home there, that the people selling it will be also selling them a house package and will be advising them to get their building application in pretty quick to reduce their rates. So it's not going to impact the vast majority of people. But what it is going to impact are those people who are land banking. And you only have to go to Midvale to see what the problem is. So councillors, I've had numerous people from the Midvale area complain to me quite tearfully and in really some distress about the impacts to them on living in a home that is next to an empty block. It's not just the shopping trolleys or the dumped rubbish, it is the antisocial behaviour. And that is actually mentioned in the staff's report. The aim of the higher differential rates is to discourage holding of vacant land and to reduce opportunities for littering, graffiti and antisocial behaviour, which may occur on long-held vacant land parcels. That is a common situation, particularly in Midvale and also in Midland. It is extremely distressing, and it is quite normal to use tax policy to encourage the behaviour that we want, which is the building of houses on residential land. Now, we've used tax policy in the Swan Valley to reduce rates for people who are conducting a horticultural or viticultural business. So we've used tax policy there to reduce rates. Here, we're intending, through this change, to use tax policy to encourage the desired behaviour, which is building on vacant residential land, for the benefit of the other ratepayers, because then we'll be getting more rates income, and also for their safety. It is not a safe situation right now, councillors.
Point of order, I'm sorry. The link to safety and graffiti with vacant blocks. I mean, I live on Hawley Road in Midland, and the front of our strata building is covered in graffiti, and it's not vacant.
Point of order.
Well, I can only deal with one point of order at a time. I believe the report under benefits does mention antisocial behaviour, disposal of rubbish, unkept conditions and fire hazards. So it's in the report, Councillor Podovnik. You have a point of order, Councillor Richardson?
Yes, Mr Mayor, it would be Councillor Podovnik stating I live on Hawley Road when that's not her current address.
It is my current address.
No.
And I do live there.
No, by admission.
Sorry,
That is
Councillor.
untrue.
Councillor Richardson.
From Councillor Podovnik, that is untrue
Councillor
and stated where she lives to myself.
Councillor Richardson, I'm trying to give
Do
you
you
a
want me to show
ruling.
you a bit?
Councillor Podovnik states she lives on Hawley Road. You question her. She said she does live on that road. I'm going to leave it there. I rule you have no point of order. Councillor Johnson, you have a minute and a half left of your debate. Thank you.
Yeah, and I live in 29 Swan Street, Guildford. So it says under benefits, as has been pointed out during this discussion on page 188, this can in turn address other issues that may arise from vacant land, including illegal rubbish disposal, unkempt conditions that can become fire hazards, and other antisocial behaviours. Councillors, it will eliminate the antisocial behaviours. It will stop the graffiti, stop the shopping trolleys. It will get us more revenue. And my calculations are, just looking at the report, it could potentially bring in up to another $1.5 million. Now, I think, if my memory serves me correct, and I'm sure councillors will jump in to correct me if I'm wrong, that's about 1.5% on rates. So we're looking at a potential saving to our ratepayers who are holding built property. We're just using taxation policy to encourage the correct behaviour. So we need to remember, councillors, that the staff are recommending this. It says it is recommended that council resolve to support implementation of 2 new vacant land rating categories. It's not something that is outrageously emotional. It's actually a pretty fundamental thing that we need to do on behalf of our community, to raise money, to encourage the right behaviour and to stop antisocial behaviour. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers for or against? Being no other speakers, you have your right to reply. Thank you, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, councillors. Just want to start off with one of the fundamentals. Fire hazards, shopping trolleys. We talk about emotion, we talk about red herrings, I think. We actually have...
Point of order.
What's your point of order, Councillor Johnson?
On page 188, it actually says fire hazards in the report.
Yes.
So it's not a red herring.
Well, I didn't see the word shopping trolley, but
But
please.
it does say fire hazards.
Mayor, I don't agree with where this is going, because I was going to continue with...
Please continue,
with
Councillor Henderson.
the
You
point
have no point of order, Councillor Johnson.
that they are absolute red herrings, because we have local laws to be able to deal with people that don't maintain their blocks. We should apply those local laws. And hopefully, staff will consider that as part of this discussion. And shopping trolleys, we have a local law about shopping trolleys that's hopefully going to support that problem. So the so-called unkempt issues we have the ability to deal with. So let's get rid of that red herring. Now, back to the question. When a developer develops a pile of land, they don't just develop one block. They probably develop, in some cases, several hundred, because it's commercially viable to do that. Otherwise, the cost would be staggering. So what happens is, oh, damn, COVID came along and everything stops. So we're going to say, well, you're sitting on that land and you're land banking it and you're just not doing it. The point I want to make about bringing that COVID game into it is that simply you cannot predict the future. You cannot predict the risks of the future. So, Council, if you want to turn around and then nail these people against the wall and tax them because they've got land that they can't actually sell because of whatever the commercial implications might be at the time, then we have a real problem because the cost of that land effectively is going to go up and up and up and up directly as a result of the tax. And the fact of the matter is we're talking about being able, the people to be able to buy land. And being able to buy land affordably. So I want to talk about the emotion issue. the idea about family is just simply one factor in this, because family are involved with these things as well as business. Families, our ratepayers, they're the ones who will cop this in the neck, and they're the ones that won't be too happy about that at all. And so we talk about the building license stage. Well, you might buy a block of land and something happens and you simply can't get enough money together to be able to build just now. So it could be that you're stuck with this having a contract to buy land. Some land you've got to build on in a couple of years and others not. The point is that here you are stuck with a problem you can't afford to build right now. You don't want to sell. You want to wait until you've got the money together to do it. In the meantime, you're being taxed to death on your land. There are so many circumstances that we have not even contemplated.
Point of order, Mayor.
What's your point of order, please, Councillor?
That we're
Am I right to
discussing.
reply? Thank you.
I'm sorry if I got that wrong, but we're discussing rates, not taxes. I thought they were separate.
I think a lot of councillors have used the word
They
tax
certainly
in
have.
the
Mayor.
debate tonight, so I rule you have no point of order. You have a minute and 35 seconds left, Councillor Henderson.
Is that including the interjections? Thank you.
Thank you.
The point here is that we had a report. We talked about the report last week. There was discussion that obviously you would take this to the stages as part of the budget. Yes, but Councillor Podolak made a very clear point. There's once you get this ball rolling, and that's what this is about, getting this ball rolling. As you know, it's rare that no matter what people say in their submissions, it is rare that much happens. And that is fundamental here. This is the point at which we should be making a stand to look after our ratepayers that have aspiration, that want to do things in their lives, and land is part of that.
What's your point of order, Councillor?
I'm sorry, but ratepayers that have aspirations and want to do things in their lives. I mean, you know, it's not just people that own vacant land that have aspirations. I mean, truly,
Where's
we
the
have.
point of order, Mayor?
If I can just hear what Councillor Catalano has to say, and then I'll make a ruling. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to say is, you know, all of our ratepayers, whether they own vacant blocks of land or not, have aspirations and want to do better in their lives. And I think that should be acknowledged rather than just saying it's just a certain, group of people who've got vacant land that are aspiring and should be commended for that or something like that.
Thank you. I rule you have no point of order. Councillor Henderson, you've got 50 seconds.
Mayor, I'm actually very offended by that. Aspiration is one of the great Australian dreams. And frankly, if we want to tear down people's aspiration, that's wrong. Interrupting with debate.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
I'm not happy about at all.
What's your point of order, Councillor Johnson?
This comment about aspiration, it's not relevant. So I'm referring to the
Councillor Johnson.
5.2C, a speaker's remarks not being relevant to the motion or amendment.
Yes,
That's
thank
it.
you.
It's completely irrelevant.
I've heard several councillors use that word tonight during debate, so I'm going to rule you have no point of order. Councillor Henderson, you've got 30 seconds left, and I'd request you stay on track and debate the items used against you in your debate in that last 30 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. It's almost as bad as federal parliament.
Thank you.
Councillors, I was waiting for it.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Councillors, if we keep on interjecting, we won't finish tonight's meeting in a timely manner. What is your point of order, Councillor Johnson?
5.2, point of order. D, a speaker's use of offensive, indecent or insulting expressions or uncalled for insinuations regarding a person's motives or conduct. So I think we need to be responding to the debate and we're getting a bit off track.
I've asked Councillor Henderson to do that. He's got 23 seconds left and I rule you have no point of order.
I apologise for my digression, Mayor. Just to finish, councillors, this is a very, very important part of tonight's meeting agenda. I request that you seriously consider this. This is an imposition that we should not get started. We have not considered all of the circumstances. It's absolutely incumbent on us to look after our ratepayers and to put this down. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make sure everyone's clear. This is a motion moved by Councillor Henderson not to move to refuse the introduction of vacant land. And I'm now going to put Councillor Henderson's motion to refuse the introduction. Those in favour? I have Councillor Jones, Councillor Pradovnik, Councillor Singh, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson and Councillor McCulloch. I make that 9. The motion is passed. Those against were Councillor Bowman, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight and Councillor Richardson. That is 6. The motion is passed. It's 4 minutes past 8. We'll stop for our break. If I can ask everyone to be back in the chambers at 8:15, we'll recommence. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. The next item on the agenda is item 7.1, annual meetings of electors, consideration of motions on page 192. Councillor Bowman wishes to speak against the officer's recommendation. Therefore, I need a mover and a seconder. Move Councillor Congdon. I have a seconder in Councillor Parry. Do you wish to open the debate, councillors? Thank you. Councillor Bowman, you wish to speak against the officer's recommendation?
I do, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, the report provided by staff advises what motions were carried and what motions were lost. All of these are decisions made by the electors at the meeting. That is a decision to support or a decision not to support. The Local Government Act is very specific at section 533 subsection 1 in that all decisions made at an electors meeting are to be considered at the next ordinary meeting, or if not practical, the next opportunity. The Act does not state that councillors only consider all motions passed at the electors meeting, and neither does it state that council does not have to consider the motions not passed. Should we be considering all the motions is a grey area, and it resulted in quite a bit of discussion with Wellgood staff and myself over the last week. This is not a new issue, and it's been previously raised with local government industries. I therefore cannot support recommendation 2 from the officers. In addition, there are motions, for example, motion 9, that the officers' comments state, council considered the matter of tree planting as part of its recent adoption of the city's urban forest plan. This may be correct, the council did consider the matter of tree planting, but I do not recall, nor after having listened to the debate again, yes, I listened to it again, that it is correct. The council considered that all new plantings of trees are to be watered in the first 2 years, and an annual report supplied council advising how many trees have been planted and how many survived. This is the motion that was put to the meeting, and I do not think it's appropriate to try and mould it, modify it, or change it to suit, or to perhaps avoid having to write a further report. When I went to Wellgood for some advice, they told me it was up to council to determine any motions and what is to be done with each of these. It was fairly obvious to me and many others at the annual electors meeting, there was in particular 2 distinct groups. It was commented to me a few weeks ago by one person in attendance that he was asked to attend as a favour to person X, and he was told just how to vote, whichever way person X did. I was told by this resident he went along to his wife for some beeps and giggles. I'm aware that one ratepayer who isn't elected voted on items and even moved a motion. The Act again is not clear, although I thought it previously was, on whether someone who isn't elected can participate, and that's 526 of the Act. There appears to be some members of the public that were aware of motions before I was as a councillor. I'm not sure how that happened. Therefore, it would not be unreasonable when looking through all the motions that were moved and either carried or lost for this council to determine what it wants to do. Wellgood advised me today that it is totally up to council to determine. I therefore suggest that perhaps a councillor, because I already have spoken now, may want to move an amendment to officers' motions that may or may not want to include that the 9 years of financial reports, for example, on the Midland Oval redevelopment project be released to ratepayers. Councillors, this is our opportunity to determine what we want to do with those decisions from the annual electors meeting.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Councillor Knight.
Amendment,
What's
please.
your amendment?
That we, in light of what Councillor Bowman was saying, that we insert in there that release the 9 years of financials for the Midland Oval Redevelopment Master Plan.
Right, I believe I have to rule your motion out of order. That was subject of a motion before council in the last couple of months, and it'll have to wait at least 3 months before it comes back. But I'll take some direction either from Mr. CEO or from our governance officer, Ms. Hodgkin.
Through you, Mayor, if the matter has come before council in the last 3 months, then you're correct.
Question? Can I have the specific section of the meeting procedure local law that rules that out?
Thank you. Just allow Ms. Hodgkin to find it. Not a notice of motion.
Through you, Mayor, it's 2.11 at the end of 9. Where a notice of motion is not moved, lapses for the want of a seconder, is lost or is not deferred for consideration of a later stage or date by resolution at the meeting at which it is listed, the same or similar motion is not to be put before a meeting for at least 3 months from the date of that meeting.
Councillor Bowman first.
Mr. Mayor, a question is what Councillor Knight proposing, is that a notice of motion or an amendment to a motion?
I believe it's an amendment, and in accordance with local procedures, local law 6.1b, we require under 6.1a, a member who wishes to move a motion is different to the officer's recommendations, give notice of that motion 2 business days prior to the meeting where possible. And B goes on to say any motion for which notice of motion has not been given in accordance with paragraph A is required to have the consent of the presiding member, and I'm ruling that motion not be allowed. You have a question, Councillor Catalano?
Yes, thank you. When was that motion last put to council?
I believe Councillor Johnson put a motion to cancel, and he's holding up financial records and moved that those financial records for the past 9 years, I think it might have been either the November or the December meeting, were to be released to the public.
And another question, isn't that more than 3 months ago?
As I said, I don't recall it was the November or December meeting, but
it is an important point because it's got to be 3 months according to
any regards, Councillor Catalano, I've just ruled it out under the provisions of 6.1b. Thank you. So I'll ask, are there any other speakers for or against the motion?
So, Mr. Mayor, just a question. It says any motion for which notice has not been given. This is an amendment. This is a fairly normal thing in our meetings to move an amendment. In fact, your ruling would say that no councillors can ever rule an amendment. So, and in addition, the second point is if I'm looking at the December meeting, I'm not seeing anything in there about the financial report. So I think more than 3 months has gone. So I think it's valid.
As I said, in any regard, Councillor Knight said he wishes to move a motion, and I've ruled that out of order. So we'll move on.
He's moving an amendment, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, and I've ruled that out of order, Councillor Johnson.
Mr. Mayor, we're trying to explain to you, you can't rule an amendment out of order. It's a normal part of our meeting procedures, local law.
He didn't say he wanted to move an amendment, he said he wanted to move a motion.
Well, he can revise his language, Mr. Mayor. So
He said amendment, Mr. Mayor.
he did say amendment.
I'll seek some guidance from the governance officer on 6.1, introduction of motions or an amendment. That's the heading of the title, introducing of it. And it said any motion for which notice has not been given in accordance with paragraph A is required to have the consent of the presiding member.
A question, Mr. Mayor. You've been a councillor for 30 years. Surely you can recall amendments being made on many occasions. This is not an unusual thing.
No, it's not an unusual thing, Councillor Johnson, and I've made my ruling. So I'll ask again, are there any other speakers for or against?
Excuse me, I'd like to move a motion of dissent actually against your ruling because I don't think it's
I'll
correct.
ask if you have a seconder. Councillor Catalano is the mover. Councillor Johnson is the seconder. I'll now put it to the...
Excuse me, can I just please first get some information from the governance officer over there as to whether this amendment is allowable, given that the 3 months hasn't, it is more than 3 months.
Well,
Could I just have some
you've just
clarity
moved
on
the
that?
dissent motion, Councillor.
I know,
Catalano.
but I would
feel-
like to have some
I
clarity
feel I'm
on it.
obliged to deal with the dissent motion first.
But to inform the rest of the council in their voting, we need to have that information from the governance officer. It's only reasonable to ask for that and to get that.
I believe, and I'll take some guidance from the governance officer,
Thank
whether I need to deal with the dissent motion before you can ask a question about a different item.
Well, we can't vote on it until we've had the guidance. It's only reasonable. You can't vote until you've had the information.
Ms. Hodgkin?
You can vote on the dissent motion and then have your question answered.
Well, I'm suggesting that you can't actually vote properly on this motion as to whether, because the dissent is actually that this motion should be allowed. So we're asking you to please provide some, I'm asking you to please provide some advice as to whether this amendment can be allowed, given that it hasn't been introduced into this chamber within the last 3 months.
Ms. Hodgkin, I'm having trouble seeing you, so
Presiding Member, if you look at 6.14, where a member moves a motion which differs from the relevant recommendation or an amendment to a motion, the presiding member shall ask if the CEO wishes to give an oral report to the meeting. So it does seem to suggest that you can entertain the amendment. Unfortunately, it's not particularly clearly drafted section because it talks about...
we'll deal with this item first, Councillor Johnston, before you perhaps further complicate the issue.
It talks about moving any motion or amendment, and then unfortunately A, B and C and D use the word motion only.
Thank you, but as I said, if the heading is introducing a motion or amendment, I think that would be similar to 1A, B, C and D. My question was, do I need to deal with the dissent motion before we discuss other questions or other people raise other issues?
I believe you do.
Thank you.
Question. Can we please examine section 6.10 of the meeting procedures local law, which refers to amendments?
Well, can I deal with the dissent motion first, Councillor Johnson?
Mr. Mayor, I suggest it's withdrawn so we can get advice on 6.10 and maybe we could get the CEO to step in and assist us here.
So you're withdrawing your second of the dissent motion?
Yes, I am, because I think we need advice on 6.10. 6.10 is very clear about what an amendment is. A member may move an amendment to a motion at any time during the
Councillor
debate.
Johnson, can we deal with the dissent motion for it? If you're withdrawing a seconder, I'll ask Councillor Catalano if she wishes to withdraw as the mover.
Only on the condition that I can actually reintroduce it after I've heard the information relevant to my motion, my dissent motion. Because otherwise, if you're going to rule after we've heard the information...
I'm not going to rule, I'm going to put it to the vote.
Sorry, if you're going to rule that... If I am to withdraw my dissent motion now, and we hear the information from the governance officer, And then later on, when I actually want to reintroduce my dissent motion, and you say, oh no, that's out of order because you've already introduced it and withdrawn it, then that would penalise my chance of doing that. So in fact, and anyone else in the chamber. So in fact,
Well, I'm asking you now.
Well, I
do
will
you wish to withdraw? your
only
dissent motion?
only if you agree that I can introduce it again once I've heard from the governance officer.
I'll have to take advice from the governance officer or the CEO on that, but you know, I haven't experienced this in my time in chambers before, where people wanted to put in dissent motions and withdraw them, and the seconders withdraw. So at the moment,
Well, you've asked me to withdraw, and I'll say,
I'm asking you to withdraw. Otherwise, I'll call for another seconder.
okay. Well, my question to you was, if I withdraw, will you allow me to introduce it again in this meeting after we've heard from the governance officer?
If under our local meeting procedures, I'm allowed to.
Well, that's
allow
another
me-
question,
well,
isn't it? Because
that's
now we're
it.
going to have to ask the governance officer as to whether that's possible.
That's correct.
Thank you.
So we can just deal with one item at a time.
Well, the last question is the one we have to deal with, and then we just have to work backwards from there.
Thank you. So at the moment, I have a mover for a dissent motion in Councillor Catalano. I have no seconder.
No, the problem is that you've asked me to withdraw, right? You've asked me to withdraw,
And you
and
haven't
I've
done
said that. No, I haven't done it. I've said
So-
because I will withdraw it if I'm allowed to reintroduce it. And you said you don't know, you're going to get some guidance. So can we have some guidance as to whether I'm able to reintroduce my dissent motion if I withdraw it now at this meeting after I've heard from you? That's the first question.
Can you
Please.
provide any advice, please, Ms Hodgkin?
That's where I think it sits. That's right. You're correct, Councillor Johnson.
The question, though, is can it be reintroduced again at this meeting? That's the question.
I can see no reason why it couldn't be.
Okay, great. Okay.
So
Thank
what do you
you.
wish to do, Councillor Catalano?
Well, given that I've just been advised that I can reintroduce it at this meeting, then I'm happy to withdraw it and hear from the governance officer about whether we can actually have this amendment tonight, given that 3 months is more than 3 months has elapsed since that same motion was introduced into the council.
Which one are you talking about? Her question on Dave's amendment? Yeah. Well, 6.10 of the meeting procedures local law allows an amendment to a motion take a certain form, and 3A says that certain words be omitted, substituted or added, that certain parts be omitted and others substituted or added. So reading that, I think that Councillor Knight can move an amendment.
But what is the motion, please?
So it's an amendment.
I know, but it says an amendment, a member may move an amendment to a motion. And what the issue I have is I haven't got a motion.
Could somebody assist Councillor Knight with the motion, please? I mean, I think he knows what he wants to do. With the amendment, please. Can someone assist him? So, staff member, assist him with that motion, please. with that amendment, sorry, I should call it an
The
amendment.
motion we have is the councillor's recommendation.
That's right, and councillor Knight has put forward an amendment to that motion.
Well, what is that amendment?
Well, the amendment is that council resolved to release the last 9 years of the financials of the MORM.
Well, that's not a council motion. That's a motion from the annual general meeting of electors. That's correct.
So he's amending the officer's recommendation, Mr. Mayor, along those lines.
So the officer's recommendation on page 201 is council resolved to note the minutes of the annual meeting of electors held on the Monday, February 6, 2003, and note the comments outlined in the report detailing when reports are anticipated to be presented to council on relevant motions. I have no motion from a councillor dealing with the matter that Councillor Knight now wants to move an amendment to. And as I said, there is no motion received in the last 2 days under section 6.1. Can I please finish? Under 6.1.1a and 6.1.1b would rule it out if I don't agree to it. Sorry, Councillor Bowman's first.
Mr. Mayor, my understanding is the manager of governance has suggested that it can be considered. My understanding also is Councillor Knight is amending recommendation 2 of the officer's recommendation, which says notes the comments outlined in the report detailing when reports are anticipated presented to council relevant motions, with the following amendment to release the financials of the MORM. Because in the comments outlined in the report, it says not to. So he's suggesting it is, and that's the amendment. The question perhaps then is, has it been more than 3 months, which was the other option? But that's just...
I can only deal with one at a time. Thank you. Have you got a date of that meeting?
It was not in November and it was not in December.
No, it was the 14th of December, page 65. And today we are not at the 3 months.
And is it 3 months or 3 meetings, bearing in mind we didn't have a meeting in January? What was the date, Councillor?
I have it as the 14th of December on page 65.
So it's not quite 3 months, Councillor Johnson. Of order on the time factor.
You think it's wrong, Tony?
I think we need to proceed, councillors. We had a mover and a seconder, from memory. Let me find my notes. Does anyone wish to speak against the officer's report on item 7.1, the annual meeting of electors? Anyone for? Then Councillor Parry, you have your right of reply. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Congdon, your right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, having read the report from the actions that came from the electors meeting, I'm pretty satisfied of the commentary that are contained within. However, I will say there is nothing, councillor, in this room as we move forward from agenda to raise a notice of motion on any of these items that are in the report, and that includes the item in relation to the financials. I've said for my nearly 20 years on council, I don't know why we wait till the end of a year to get fired off with 20 or 30 notice of motions which can be put forward to any member of this council. by any member of the public, and those councillors come and bring that notice of motion to this council. So I don't know why we go through this process. You all have the opportunity, as I said, to bring a motion forward. So I'm going to support the officer's recommendation, and with that premise that you can go ahead and put a motion forward in the future, provided it was in the 3-month program.
You finished your debate?
I have, thank you.
So I'm now putting the item 7.1, which
Question, Mr. Mayor. I cannot.
Sorry, Councillor Johnson. As you remind me, I'm going to put the item to the vote. I can't take any questions from members. I'm going to put the vote to adopt the officer's recommendation. Those in favour? Of Councillor Jones, Councillor Podovnik, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Singh, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson and Councillor McCulloch. I make that 10. The officer's recommendations passed. Those against were Councillor Bowman, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight and Councillor Richardson. Are you voting, Councillor Johnson?
Yeah, I voted in.
You voted for? Okay, I had 10. So I've only got 4 against. Can I have those against, please? Is Councillor Bowman, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight and Councillor Richardson. So the number is 11 for and 4 against. The motion is carried. Thank you.
Question at this point, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Congdon was referring to the December minutes, and I cannot find anything in here about the financial report.
Well, we've moved past that point, Councillor Johnson. We're now on to item 7.3, 2023 local government elections. It's on page 236, and I believe that's you, Councillor Bowman.
Mr. Mayor, I move the council resolves to adopt the officer's recommendation as is, with 4 added, and that be that the city write to the Minister for Local Government expressing concerns with the cost of postal elections conducted by the WAEC and request that the state government investigate the percentage of WAEC staff costs and overheads charged to local governments. The reason being that the charge is a large percentage of the costs charged by the WAEC for indirect staff costs and overheads to conduct a local government postal election is excessive and is a cost shifting exercise, as these are fixed costs of the WAEC.
Seconded, Councillor Congdon. Is there anyone against? You wish to debate it? You have 5 minutes to open your debate. Thank you, Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, councillors, a third of the cost estimates from the Electoral Commission is for WAEC staff and overheads. This, for example, includes the cost of their IT staff having to write the count program. Why should local governments be required to pay for this? A large proportion of these costs are for the current permanent WAEC staff that are required for state elections. These are not additional costs. And again, why should local governments be required to pay for this? My understanding is WAEC staff and overhead costs are charged on a per elector basis. The Western Suburbs councils, when combined, would be about the same size and number of electors as the Pearce ward. These 7 local governments combined would pay a quarter of the cost that the City of Swan is charged. Why? Large metro local governments need to stop being used to subsidise the real cost of elections for smaller local governments. Local governments should be charged direct costs for the WAEC conducting an election. The legislation whereby the WAEC is required to charge on a full cost recovery needs to be further explored and investigated, as charging for indirect charges, which make up over a third of the cost, is not reasonable and I believe is a cost shifting exercise.
Thank you. Councillor Congdon is the seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not to add very much more, but I can't see the harm in this particular case of expressing the Minister in writing of the concerns of the costs. He might just come back and go, oh, well, you know, we'll do something about it. Or he just might come back and go, well, I'm not coming back.
Thank you. Councillor Parry, you should debate against it.
In fact, I can prove what he's going to do to you right now. That's exactly what he's going to do to you later. He doesn't care. In fact, 42% corporate. I didn't run a procurement division. 42% corporate overheads. That, yes, my apologies, I'm just reading the report straight off the bat. That's a significant amount of money, 42% in corporate overheads.
Sorry, councillors. Councillor Parry is debating.
Question, please.
Sorry, Councillor Parry is partway through his debate. If you have a question, you can ask it when he's finished his debate. Thank you.
It's page 18 on Run the Sheet, councillors. The issue I have is that I do not believe it's value for money. It's as simple as that. And we have run an in-person election without Councillor Singh being the victor in regards to it. I think it's at least worth a discussion to find a way to do cost savings. We keep on hearing discussions in regards to cost savings, Merrill dinners, other events and stuff like that, which are all very important to have these discussions. I think it's at least worth another discussion to see what we get to in regards to this, because when I see 42% corporate overheads, if I saw that in my role, I'd basically be laughing at them when they provide their quotes to me. I would be laughing at them. I'd say, no way in God's green earth I am paying 42% of corporate overheads. That is absolutely ridiculous. We are getting robbed blind in regards to this. And if you honestly think the state government will even look at they'll look at our letter and then they'll just go like this. That's all they'll do. They won't do anything more because they know deep down that we have to pay for it. We have to do an election. The only way to decrease your costs is either eliminate the cost, which you can't do because elections are compulsory, or B, find an alternative solution, which could be in-person elections. And that's all you can do. I'm just giving another solution to an alternative.
Sorry,
that
Mr. Mayor, point of order, thank
What's
you.
your point of order, please?
Sorry, councillor, these elections are not compulsory.
Well, yes, they are, because you must have them every 4 years. You have no right to choose the
I
vote.
think- Thank you,
no.
councillors. Thank you. I think there's been a misunderstanding of what Councillor Parry was saying. Local governments are obliged to have elections every 2 years on a rotating cycle, but they're not compulsory for electors to vote. So I think I've clarified that. If you can please continue, I rule you have no point of order. Thank you, Councillor Congdon.
Thank you, Mr. North Korea. So moving on, I think it's worthwhile. I just think it's worthwhile have a look at this alternative, and that's all I'm looking for, because I do not believe that 42% of our costs should be paying for WAEC. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. And I think that any letter that's written, they're just going to tear it up. Why? Because the Minister of Local Government is from a small shire as well in Vincent. They don't understand how much it's going to cost us. And he tell you the truth, in the way that the Labor Party and the state government is going, they don't really care. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. You have a question, Councillor Catalano?
No, it's okay. Sorry.
Any other speakers for or against the motion? Councillor Henderson.
I'll accept interruptions. It seems to be the norm tonight. Mr. Mayor, $524,000 is an estimate only. An estimate only. Wow, an estimate. Maybe we'll get a bill for $650,000 or something because of an overrun on the development of the software to count the upper house style way that this election is going to be held. It is that in itself is the quota system proposed is, in my view, an absolute joke. But that's just my view. I just want to get to the estimate that we've received. Councillors, this is cost shifting of unbelievable proportions. Staggering cost shiftings. We cop it at every turn from the state government. They shift costs to us like you wouldn't believe. So, maybe they've got a problem with their budget for the year. So, okay, we'll go out there and we'll hit all the councils for a staggering amount of money.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. They've got a $6.1 billion surplus, so I don't think they have a problem with budget.
I'm talking about the Electoral Commission, Councillor. Thank you. Sorry, Mayor.
You have no point of order. Thank you, Councillor Parry. Please
I should have been
continue,
more
Councillor
clear,
Henderson.
man. But I'm going to be more clear. This is a staggering amount of money. Absolutely staggering. We have got a responsibility. I keep talking about our responsibility. Our prime responsibility is keeping the cost of our rates to our ratepayers as low as we can. Primary responsibility. that's why I'm going to support Councillor Parry's motion if it happens to get to that stage, Mayor.
Thank you.
I do think that we may get a 25 or 30% turnout. The cost per vote is enormous. Ratepayers have got every right to scream at us, absolutely scream at us, for even contemplating spending such a crazy amount of their rates on something that they can, if they're passionate enough, if they're interested enough, they'll go to a local polling booth and vote. And that is the crux of this whole thing. We certainly would have some costs, there's no doubt about that. But what the staff have suggested in terms of in-house costs, I think are overestimates. You don't need a software program to count the system for upper house style voting. You can do it mathematically on the floor, and even if it comes to that, if it might take 2 days to count it, it takes 2 days to count it. But even if you look at in the good old days, we would have 2 or 3 polling booths around the city. That's going to be a very low cost for us to conduct an election for the council. The fact that the mayor's vote is in the same batch shouldn't really increase the cost at all, other than a bit of extra time to count it. So, councillors, I think we should be telling state government that their cost shift, their enormous proposal for fees is totally unacceptable, and that we should look at an alternative approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion, Councillor Catalano.
I'm going to speak for it because what's the option? Is the option that we have in-person voting like we've had like we just had in Altone last year, where 500 people actually knew that the election was on and went down and made their in-person vote. You know, again, it's what do they call that? When you're false economics, I think they call it false economics. When you're talking about saving money, that, you know, yeah, it's a lot of money, but ultimately, if you want a good election and you want a good turnout and you want a good mandate and you want a good representation and you want a good democratic system, you have to actually spend that because that's what gets you your 30% vote mandate. You know, 30% people voted. That means that that person, those people who are voted in, you know, are voted in with a mandate. You feel confident. You feel confident that you can speak on behalf of those people. You feel confident as a council that you can represent those people. You don't feel confident as a council if you're representing less than 3% of all the people in your area or in the city, in fact, because this will be a citywide. If we end up with the same kind of impact that happened in Altone last year, where it was an in-person vote, where people in Altone, just like everybody else in the city of Swan, who are used to getting their local government ballot box in their post, end up having to find out either through Facebook or some sort of process of osmosis that there's going to be in-person elections. And what happens is most of the people, well, more than most, in fact, 25% of those people that normally would vote by postal vote won't vote because they won't even know that the voting is on, which is what happened, which is what people said to me in Altone. I didn't even know it was on. I was expecting my postal ballot. Now, that's Altone, but this is going to be citywide. It is ridiculous to think that this council could even allow itself a mandate on less than the 30% or the normal kind of 25 to 30% mandate that it gets from those people who are interested, who want to participate, and on which we, have our democratic ability to represent them. So, what is totally unacceptable actually is that our ratepayers, that our electors should miss out on voting in the way that they've always voted, because they won't be used to it. And I've said this before, they won't be used to it. And Altone last year is an absolute and utter prime example of that. And they won't find it acceptable. I mean, it's not just a few voters in Altone, it'll be right across the city, and they won't find it acceptable, and they'll be absolutely livid to think that we'll be up here making decisions for them when less than 3% of the City of Swan electors have actually feel like they've been given an opportunity to vote. So I think we have to carry on. We'll have to just carry on with bearing the costs. It's just the way it is. It's just the way it goes. That's what we do to keep our democracy alive. That's what we do to keep our mandate. And what's the options? We cannot possibly consider in-person voting across the whole of the City of Swan. It was a failure in Altone last year, and it'll be an absolute failure across the city, and will be a laughing stock. Thank you.
Got a question, Mr.
Question, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, I got a question to the Mr. Mayor and question to all councillors behalf of what presenting from the Councillor Catalano is not good outcome, not a democratic way. So I'm asking you, is she don't like to, I'm sitting with next to her chair, to attacking on me. It's not, she's just addressing to, it happened very wrong in last year election in 2021. So what are you guys allowed to me to do on these actions? Because this is not fair. If you're not happy with the, because we advertise everywhere is in-person vote. You can check my Facebook, sign around the Altone ward everywhere, spend $4,000 on the signs. And everybody must aware that I'm nominated second times. And actually the sum of the councillors, honestly I tell, they're not expecting me to I'm elected. They're not expecting, it's happened unexpected. So every voter should know that I did the door knocking, and I got a lot of complaints about why you're putting a sign there and there. This the city responsibility. They have to be notified to the community. It's not my responsibility. After I'm elected, 3 months sitting here, and behalf of what this explained to the council in the chamber, I believe that they feel that I'm not deserving this position. That's I felt that, honestly. So if I don't know if I'm wrong, but this is the democratic, they're using two times. If I'm not a criminal, so if I'm elected as a criminal, so then you say this is not democracy. This is not democratic. I'm come from the country, from other country to here for do something better, because you know all aware that what happened in overseas in the world. So please note it. I don't want to listen this type of results. If they have an issue with the council, they can talk with the council. But on the live meeting, they can just bombing on me. This is the outcome is not, they are happy. They can talk with the council, and they can objection on the day when I was elected. That's it. Thank you.
Just please make a point of order there. It was, I actually did not in any way talk about you, Councillor Singh.
So,
I was talking.
Sorry, Councillor.
That's you talking about outcomes. Sorry.
No, but
Sorry.
I just wanted to make that. I wasn't talking about. I never once mentioned. What I was talking about was the process of the election, and that being extrapolated across the city.
I'm going to rule you have no point of order, Councillor Catalano. Councillor Singh, I'm not going to take your statement as a question. I believe you entered the debate speaking your heart and mind about the way you were elected. You were elected fairly under the democratic process because this council decided to conduct an in-person election last December to fill one vacancy in the Altone ward, and you were the successful candidate. So congratulations. People have different views on that process, but this is the determination of council. When we held it last year, we decided to have it in person. Some councillors weren't happy with that. That's been and gone in the past. So I'm sorry if you felt any offence. Councillor Catalano said she didn't mean any, but the way that election was held was disappointing from some numbers to certain councillors. But it was legal, it's legitimate, and I think we need to move on. I'll now ask for speakers for the motion. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I also congratulate Councillor Singh on his election. Lawfully elected, did a great job. You've stood before, and you have a rightful and lawful place in this chamber. What we need to look at is what's the most effective way of providing representation to our community. At the last special election, we undertook a different process to what we normally do. Instead of having a postal election, we had an in-person election, and I think it was a reasonable experiment, and it got a great result. Councillor, yeah, trust me, I believe it is a great result. The outcome of the election had the effect of reducing the turnout. So my understanding, very approximately, a typical turnout in Altone Ward is about 25%. And what we got through in-person elections was about 5%, which is completely lawful. There's nothing wrong with that. But it reduces the representation. People, for whatever reason, didn't get out to vote in the normal numbers. And I'm sure we're all in agreement that a greater turnout is better than a smaller turnout. Surely that must be the case. It's better for democracy to hear from more people than from less people, so that we know by going down the path that Councillor Parry is proposing.
Mr. Mayor, I have a point of order, I'm sorry.
What's your point of order, please?
The resolution that's been put forward talks about writing to the Minister expressing the cost of postal elections. It has got nothing to do with Councillor Parry's motion, which seems to be the launch point. The motion is simply around the city right to the Minister expressing concerns. Shouldn't they be sticking to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Congdon. The motion before us, Councillor, is to adopt the officer's recommendation with point 4. If we can keep all debate to that motion, we're not debating anything else at the moment. Thank you.
So Councillor Bowman's motion proposes that we continue with the process that has been successful in the past and has resulted in a 25% turnout. So that's got to be a good thing. He's not proposing to make any savings that would result in a reduction in the turnout. What we're doing is suggesting to the WAEC that potentially their costs are too high, and certainly I agree with what's been said about the corporate costs, 42% being a little bit high. However, given the impacts that we know, and it's a fact from the past, of going in the different direction of in-person elections, I do not believe, I believe that Councillor Bowman's motion is the right way to go.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
The Councillor Johnson's going back to the in-person, and clearly it is the city right to the Minister.
Yes, and I'll ask you once again, Councillor Johnson, to debate the motion before us, which is that we write to the Minister expressing concern at the cost of a post-election.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, but I have heard other people talking about the
I didn't
relativities.
receive a point of order until then.
And it seems that I'm getting a slightly different ruling. So, look, I'll end it there. Thank you.
Well, I couldn't rule any other way because no one else had objected up until that point in time. I'll ask, are there any other speakers for or against the motion? Being no other speakers, Councillor Bowman, you'll write a reply, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, just to clarify, my motion is for us to allow the Electoral Commission to conduct our election as a postal election, but also write to the Minister expressing our concerns. I've heard quite a bit from two particular councillors who I usually respect with their knowledge of figures, so I'm going to do this in figures. We heard about state government and Labor government and all that. The postal election was introduced by the Liberal Party in 1995, 1997. It was them that put it in the legislation that it can only be a full cost recovery, hence the reason why it cannot be any more than an estimate. Again, in 2004, there was a 34% reduction in the cost of postal elections. That was a Labor government. I think it had more to do with who was actually at the Electoral Commission. And then in 2009-11, it's increased. So both parties have done it, okay? But let's get to the point of it. Value for money. I'm firmly a believer for value for money. There is only two options, the postal option or the voting in person option. The last local government that went back to postal for the whole local government was the City of Bayswater, and in their words, it was an absolute disaster. Let's talk about savings. And Councillor Parry said, can't pay the 42% overheads. It's a travesty. Well, yep, that as well. Thank you, Councillor. It's a huge cost. But guess what? That huge cost of 42% will still get charged to us in a voting in person. So if you've got a concern with the 42%, there's no difference between voting in person or postal. Let's talk about value for money. The vote per vote, the cost per vote, 500% more under a voting in person, 500% more. So value for money says to me, a 22% reduction we would have in cost for doing a voting in person, roughly a 22%, but it will reduce the voter turnout by roughly 6 times. So we're looking at 520,000 to 400,000. Councillors, I heard Councillor Henderson say, oh, don't worry about the computer count, we can do it in the back room, might take 2 nights and all that. It's completely different if you've read the legislation amendments on how that's going to be. When you do state and federal, there's 2 main parties. I'd hate to do a manual count. This system, the last manual count I did was about 800 electors, and it was 5 councillors, 5 people nominate for 4 positions. And I was the only one that knew what to do. So it is quite difficult, and that's just the basics. Look, councillors, postal is the way to go. This local government was the first local government to do postals. It was trialled here in the city of Swan. The cost has been increasing significantly over those times. It's actually happened for a lot. You'll notice the reason why one of our increases have increased so much more than others is we have a mayoral election. They're actually predicting we'll have a 30% voter turnout as opposed to 25%. That has significant increases on the estimate that has been provided, noting that we usually only get 24, 23%. History will show that those local governments have gone from a elected within to a popular elected mayor, particularly on the first election, had a significant increase. It looks like the Electoral Commission for once has actually accounted for that with a 30% voter turnout. Councillors, postal is the way to go. I don't think.
You have 1 minute left.
I don't think we should be copying the whole costs from the Electoral Commission. Those indirect costs should not be borne by us. That is a cost that state should be paying for, whether that's Labor or Liberal, and hence the reason my slightly alternative amendment motion that says let's write.
Thank you. I'm now going to put the motion. Those in favour of Councillor Jones, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Podolny, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Singh, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Knight, Councillor Richardson and Councillor McCulloch. The motion is passed. Those against were councillors Henderson, councillor Zanino and councillor Parry. The motion is passed 12-3. Thank you, councillors. I'll just note that it's almost 9:10 and we've still got 4 items left. The next item is in part C, motions of which previous notice has been given, and item C 1.1, councillor Bowman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I move that council resolves to write to the Minister of Planning requesting that any current development applications or structure plans that acknowledge stage developments or rely on a future application are required to be considered in full by the approving authority and not just the application before them. 2, bring to the attention of the JDAP our concerns in this matter. And 3, submit a motion to the next Walga East Zone meeting requesting Walga advocate on this matter.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Knight, is there anyone against? Do you wish to debate it?
Put the vote, Mr Mayor.
You don't wish to debate it? Okay, I'll go straight to the vote. Those in favour of Councillor Jones, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Podovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howard, Councillor Singh, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Parry, Councillor Knight, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Zanino and Councillor, did you have your hand up, Councillor Richardson? Councillor Richardson, I make that 12 with 3 against, being Councillor McCulley, Councillor Congdon and myself. That motion is passed. That takes us to the next item. It's item C 1.2, Councillor Catalano, Western Swan Home Support.
Thank you. Oh, hang on, sorry, maybe it's in front of me. Okay, that the council resolve to, 1, not to continue with the renovation works to the Western Swan Home Support Building located on Hull Park, Beechborough. 2, to remove the $942,000 budgeted for the proposed renovation works from the capital works budget. Reason: the cost of almost $1 million, 1, is excessive for the anticipated renovation. 2, is more than the total asset value of the building. 3, can be put to better use for a greater number of ratepayers in the Altone ward.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Knight, is there anyone against? You wish to debate it? Thank you. You have 5 minutes. Thank you, Councillor Catalano.
Yes, thank you. Well, this was in the last year's budget. It hadn't at all been, I hadn't had any advice about it at all, and in fact hadn't even known about it. But it came up that there was this $942,000 that's going to be spent on renovations, which is really, when you think about it, it is almost $1 million. Now, I don't know if there's anybody in this room, and I doubt if there is anybody in this room, that would spend $1 million refurbishing or renovating their house. I think the word overcapitalising comes to my mind. The point is that the building itself is probably not even worth $1 million. I doubt it is, actually. And in fact, maybe we should build a whole new centre with $1 million. Anyhow, the thing is that this came up when Lockridge locals asked me why so much money was being spent on the Alice Davern Centre. And you know, I didn't even know why it was being spent on there on maintenance. But it got me thinking about the building in Hull Park, the Western Home Support building in Hull Park, because the same thing goes for Beechborough residents as it does for Lockridge residents, is that they want money spent on tree planting, traffic calming. And I just want to make a point about a very dangerous car speeding down Castella Drive in Caversham last week.
Catalano, can I ask you to keep your comments on your
yes, it's part of
rather than cars speeding in Caversham.
sorry, it's my debate, and I'll carry on with it, because I just wanted to make the point about traffic calming and why it's so important for Lockridge and also for Beechborough residents, but also now for Caversham residents. And that's something they really want, because a car overturned there, very close to a park, in fact, a residential park, and it's due to speeding. So people have been asking for a lot of traffic calming.
Councillor Catalano.
Footpaths and general maintenance.
Councillor Catalano, can I
Yes.
have your attention, please?
Yes.
I'll ask you again, and I won't ask you any further. Please keep your debate to the motion before us, not
Okay.
about speeding cars.
The motion before me is about spending money. I think I put it in my question, that in my reasons, it can be put to better use for a greater number of ratepayers in the Eltham ward and for things they want. So please, may I just carry on with my debate? And then, of course, there's the intersection of Eltham Road and Amazon Drive. People have been asking for some, improvements there. So what we've got at this centre, unfortunately, is not really a lot of users. It's 19 clients, and I understand that they have a very special need with it being the dementia specialised centre and that, but 19 clients on a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday and Friday, 4 days a week, 19 clients. And there's also 9 clients and 8 clients who are actually using the men's shed. That's not very many people, and we're talking about $1 million on basically renovations for a building that isn't worth it, when people in Beechborough want the money spent on these other things that I've been talking about, including the traffic calming, the footpaths, the general maintenance, and $1 million. That's how they would like the money spent, and we've had lots of emails being sent to staff, and I'm sure we'll get more if we get a chance to be able to put those to staff in the future. So we're looking at $1 million, and
We have 1 minute left.
we've basically got a renovation to a kitchen and some plumbing and air conditioning. Perhaps it's going to be less than $1 million, perhaps it's going to be 500. Oh, we just can't tell. Well, I mean, there's a big difference between $1 million and maybe it'll cost 500,000. I'm just wondering if we need to actually look at this again. And I have asked in Eltham ward meetings if we could have a look at this and get this reduced right down so that we can actually put the funds towards what people are asking for. And then the other thing is that somebody did email me about this matter, and they said that there seemed to be quite a lot of plumbing that was going to be rectified, but they said that ultimately at the end of the day, what's the extent of this plumbing, and it's not really about renovations, it's about just keeping the building maintained.
Thank you, Councillor Catalano. That's your 5 minutes. Councillor Knight is the seconder.
Thank you very much. Just briefly, I mean, $1 million is a staggering amount of money for what's being proposed here. And I mean, when I'm looking at the scope of the works, I just find it hard to see that amount of money in solar panels, window treatments, furniture replacement, and minor modifications. There must be a more cost-effective way, and I hope that staff will have another look at this. I think it's just too much for this project. So, please, can we vote for Councillor Catalano's motion and maybe rethink this one? Thank you.
Thank you. A speaker against the motion, Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, councillors, my understanding is staff identified this as a need for refurb, upgrade. I understand that in local government we try and push those out a little bit further sometimes, and we can get away with it. We didn't on this one, did we? Because we didn't do the renovations quick enough. And if you joined me, Councillor Singh, and the Mayor the other day, they would tell you I had to leave the building because of the smell and that in there. Maybe I'm a little bit too sensitive, but so be it. I would like to say 946,000 ain't going to Altone Ward. You can't do ward accounting. It's a breach of the Act. So that 946, take it off. Guess what? I've got a whole lot of projects that I want spent in my ward, and I know Councillor Parry has as well, but I'll be fighting him for mine over his. So it's not getting spent in Altone Ward. It's getting put back into the community funds, and whatever the next priorities, that's going to be it. Isn't worth it? Wow. Ask those carers who look after these people 24/7 and the respite. Now, again, I went there the other day with the councillors and I met an amazing staff member. Was it Marlene? The most passionate staff member I've seen in local government, not to say that the others aren't. And what she wanted to do and what she said she could do was amazing, how she can get more use out of that building. But can't do it until the renovations are done. Cost. Councillor Knight mentioned about the cost. Well, it's a bit like when you go to a restaurant and you mention the word wedding, it seems to go up triple the price. Local governments goes up triple the price as well, it appears. You don't get much in local government. And I look at a whole lot of projects that we've got. I think Councillor Congdon's just pointing out that he wants to leave for the minute taker. A lot of the projects we've got on our books, I question the amount as well. But that's the amount that's costing, and Jim keeps telling us that they're going up and up each time. Hence the reason why we probably spent more than our budgets. This was identified as a need. Wouldn't renovate? Well, I was one of those stupid ones that did a major renovation of my house, probably should have knocked it down and all that. But I got what I want, and it's quite unique. I can tell you that it would cost more than $1 million to build that building again. You look at and again, exec staff can tell me the equations they usually use. You look at the meterage, you times it by a few prices, you add a bit more on, you double that, and this is how much it costs. And I reckon I'd be pretty well right in saying it's going to cost a lot more to build that, a lot more. Specialised toilets, which aren't the right toilets, because they were built 30 years ago. It's 30 years ago this building has got built, and it looks like it's still got the old 30-year ago brickwork and everything like that. So I think it's doing pretty good how it's held up. But again, staff identified this as needing an upgrade. It was identified by professional staff. I think we didn't get it in the budget in time. It's probably been pushed out a few times. It's in there now. We need to do something with it. I can't support Councillor Catalano's motion. I, for one, always like to save ratepayers' money, but I think this is well worth it. And I know too, the men's shed, I did ask the question. The men's shed is not quite like the other men's shed. Again, people with disabilities and other issues use it. I think it's great because guess what? It gets those people out of the house as well. But again, councillors, think of, is it worth it? Think of those people that are looking after these 24/7. And I said I'd give a big shout out to Sylvia, who I went one time there.
And 1 minute left.
And had a chat with her. She was amazing, a lovely lady, and it was great fun. So I suggest all councillors go and see what it's really about. And that's the reason why I also sent you all the video clip that I got told about, just for those who weren't there, could see that. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker again for the motion. Speaker against the motion. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillor Bowman for sending out the video, because that for those of us who work in 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, or 8 till 5 Monday to Friday, we often don't get to go and do all the visits, or the councillors do. So that was really helpful. Thank you for that. I want to address the reason for the motion provided by Councillor Catalano. So I'm just reading it out. The cost of almost $1 million is excessive for the anticipated renovation, is more than the total asset value of the building, and 3, most importantly, can be put to better use for a greater number of ratepayers in the Altone ward. And Councillor Catalano, in her speech, went on to talk about alternative uses that are entirely relevant to this motion because it is part of the reason. And those reasons, and some of those alternative uses, included traffic calming. So, in my view, that was a completely relevant thing to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion. Councillor Henderson.
Just briefly, councillors, even if it cost $1 million, I think if you look at some of the community facilities we're building currently, $3-4 million, sometimes $5 and $6 million is what it costs for a building of the sort we're talking about. So to spend $1 million to refurb what we've got is $50,000 a year over 20 odd years, something like that. What's the value of that to the community? Well, I'm told consistently by our community we don't have enough available spaces around for all sorts of activities. And so we have this space, we should fix it up and make it available. I think that the key thing here is that the amount of money, putting solar panels on, we're going to save electricity. Fixing up the toilets so anyone can use them, fundamental in today's needs. And that's the key here. We've got to be able to support everyone. We do have to support people in need. There are people that have special needs, and that's been highlighted. It might be 19 people, but they are people, and we've got to look after them across a broad spectrum in our community. So I think it's very important that we understand what the money is for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers for or against the motion? Then I'll enter the debate and I'll ask the Deputy Mayor to take over the timing, etc. Councillors, I do not support this motion. I'd like to point out right from the start that this item was identified by our asset management team as part of our asset renewal program. It wasn't put on a wish list by a councillor, and that's where the money from the budget came from. This is the budget we adopted, not quite, I'll say 9 months ago, back in July of last year. There is no issue, no comment, nothing raised that the money was out of order. Because the money came from our asset renewal program, that reserve, that money would go back into that same reserve. So it can't be spent on trees or traffic calming devices or anything else that is not an asset renewal program. So fundamentally, one of the reasons it is flawed. As I said, I had the opportunity with other councillors to attend there the other day. It was an open invitation. It was in the council calendar. And I too was impressed with the passion of one of the staff members there. And I found out that this building is not just for people in the Altone ward or surround. We send our City of Swan Community Care bus to the back of Gidgegannup, to Bullsbrook, to Allenbrook and to Balladura and into Lockridge to pick up our residents who need this type of care. And I only pray that none of us suffer that we need to go into a facility like that to give our family some respite. So it's not only the people who go there to get the care, we're also looking after the family of that person because they get a day off from full-time care. I'm disappointed that this motion even got this far. Yes, it is a sum of money, but when you see the work that needs to be done there, air conditioning, new showers and toilets, refurbishment of the kitchen, and as Councillor Bowman alluded to, perhaps this had been pushed out for a year or two and we waited, and now we've had a burst water pipe which completely saturated the carpet tiles. We were recommended to wear a mask when we went there the other day, but it's the people who go there. From the information I received, they can only take a maximum between 12 to 15 clients a day because of the staff ratios. They would like to have up to 20, but there's just not the space, but there's also not the staff there to control that number. What I wasn't aware of is that the men's shed that operates out of the garage at the rear of the property, you have to have a disability to go there. It's not just for able-bodied people. So if you don't have a disability in your doctor's certificate to say that you've got a particular disability, you can't go to that men's shed. You'll have to go to another one. I think that's once again being inclusive. I don't believe any work's being done on the men's shed, but they surely need an upgrade as well. So that might come in a future year or two. I was gobsmacked when I saw the motion. I cannot support it in any way. This is our most vulnerable group of people in our society, people who have trouble going to the toilet. Marlene said the other day that they help each other out. Some are more able-bodied and mentally acute than others. Some have very low functioning. They don't remember, but when they go there, they help each other. She mentioned one gentleman who's got his new pair of work boots on, who will go out to the garden, and that's his domain. And it's great to see our people who are most disadvantaged, thank you, getting that resource provided to them. We only late last year agreed to continue with our Swan Community Caring Program. Now they want to expand and make this a bigger and better service. They're talking about perhaps with the renovations, they'll be able to put in 2 of the storerooms, make them into bedrooms, so some clients can sleep overnight with a dedicated carer to give the family a bit more of a rest. So I can't support it, and I'd encourage you not to support it. Thank you. Councillor Catalano, you're right to reply, please.
Okay, thank you. I don't know why you're so gobsmacked that I'm asking for some scrutiny about how money is being spent. I mean, that is my job. And I'm also here to represent all of the community, not some of the community. And obviously, it is heartbreaking to hear about people who need these extra special care and all of the work that people do to put in caring for people with disabilities. I know I have people in my own family who have disabilities. It's not easy, but the fact is that I represent the whole of my community, the whole of the community in Altone and in Beachborough, and in fact through the City of Swan. And I'm here to make sure that money, that the ratepayers' money is spent, and I'm here to provide scrutiny to that. And it's not gobsmacking, it is actually what I am here to do. Okay, so, you know, it's not about tearing on heartstrings and, you know, it is about being pragmatic and practical and reasonable. And the fact is that there's just not enough people using that facility to justify that huge amount of money. And the facility itself isn't actually a big enough facility, or it doesn't have, the facility itself is not even worth that much to have that much money spent on it. So in fact, maybe we should be thinking about coming up with a plan for a proper facility, a properly designed facility from the outset for people who are actually suffering from these afflictions, and also people who have disabilities. Who are born that way. You know, it's not about, you know, making this available to the community. This is not available to the whole community. This is available to very few people in the community. We're not fixing it up and making it available.
Yeah, 1 minute
What
left,
we're
thank you.
doing is we're actually putting a Band-Aid on a very bad situation, because this building is really probably not fit for purpose for the amount of demand in the community that there is for people with dementia, for the amount of demand that there is in the community for people with disabilities. And in fact, if we really want to do something for all of those people, and there's so many of them, not 20 or 80 a week, if we want to really do something for those people, we'll be looking at this money and investing this money long term in a project that we can actually say is value for money. And then I can stand up here and say to the rest of the City of Swan community, and also the ratepayers in Alto, you know what, it is value for money what we're proposing, because we're proposing a purpose-built facility for those people.
Thank you, that's your right to reply. I'm now going to put the motion. Those in favour? I have Councillor Howlett, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight, Councillor Richardson. The motion is lost. Against were Councillor Jones, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Brodovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Singh, Councillor Congdon, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor McCulloch and myself. The motion was lost, 11 votes to 4. Yes, thank you. The next item is confidential. You're moving that way to go behind closed doors. Seconded Councillor Johnson. Can we make sure the live streaming is now turned off? Thank you. Let me know when that's been done. Being no one against, I declare that carried. And I'll just have to announce that in Part C of the confidential folder on C 3.1 acquisition by agreement, a portion of Great Northern Highway Bullsbrook, the officer's recommendation was adopted. That takes us to Part 2. Notice of motions for consideration of the following meeting if given during this meeting, and councillors to give notice of motion for consideration at the next meeting. The deadline for submission is 5 p.m. Monday, the 17th of March this year. And as always, I ask that you seek the input of staff if you wish to put up a notice of motion or a motion. You have your hand up, Councillor Knight. Yes, thank you. As I said, seek advice. Being no further business, I close the meeting at 9:36 and thank you all for your attendance and participation.